Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is January 15th, YC128, and this is the Eater's Show! How's it going, guys? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a good day. It is Thursday, and so we are doing more missions as per our theme of the week. How's it going, guys? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We do have a couple of announcements before jumping into kind of the main topic of the day, or at least some other things to discuss. First of all, really sorry about how yesterday's stream ended up. I can only hope that it will not happen again. That said, I suspect, if you guys remember, you know, my webcam went out and I had to use my phone for a webcam. Well, I had to install certain software to make that work, and it was always kind of a little bit janky about how it was working. And even when I tried to uninstall it, it like popped up an extra window about it. So I suspect that that might have actually been it, where it was trying to run that extra thing because of OBS, and it was broken. So that could be what happened. I'm going to hope that's what happened. But I'm fine. The Dominic's Navy issue is fine. The mission got completed. Yay. And I do want to say thank you so much to Seventh Heaven for those 20 gifted subs at the end of last stream. I do apologize that I wasn't still live when that happened, so I couldn't react to it, but I did. We collectively got together to figure out who it was that did it, so thank you so much, Seventh Heaven, for that. But today should be good. We're doing some hauling missions. What's fun about that is I have recommended doing distribution missions on several different occasions. I've known people that have done distribution missions for several different occasions, on several, you know, whatever, which is how I know to recommend it. But I've actually never done it myself. So today we're going to go through the process of figuring out how to do them efficiently. And this is part of a bigger program of kind of what I'm doing this year, along with the mission running and stuff like that. As you can see with the last couple of days, a lot of times if somebody's going to do something like mission running, or really any activity in EVE, any content creator in EVE Online, what they often do is just say, okay, well, here's my ship, here's what I'm doing, this is how to do it. And, you know, there is a certain amount of like, here's the ship, here's how to fly it, go do it, that I like. But really around here on this stream, we like to help explain how to understand EVE Online, not just how to play EVE Online. And so I think it's been a lot of fun to just work on fits and like take a problem and work our way through it all the way from start to finish. So that way you guys can not only know some things about these activities, but also maybe get inside my head into the thinking process of like working through problems within EVE and developing solutions with EVE, because that's, in my opinion, ultimately the more valuable skill set to have than just knowing, oh yeah, this Dominic's Navy issue will work, this Raven Navy issue will work. That's not as important as the process of figuring out what you want to do and getting into it. So, you know, in that theme, we wanted to do some distribution today, missions today. But, by the way, this is also thanks to Thrans. Everybody say thank you, Thrans. He's the one that thought of this idea for distribution missions today. He did it. He commented it in the supporters chat, which you should absolutely be in if you're a member in Discord. And I thought it was a cool enough idea. Let's go ahead and do it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do distribution agents. We'll get into that more later. The advantage that I have that a lot of people don't have, well, I've got a few advantages. So we're going to look into a lot of different levels of it, from top to bottom, so we'll figure out the details. But remember, I have really good standings with Gallente and Mimitar, so I can pull any mission agent in the Gallente and Mimitar at the moment. So I'll probably be sticking with those. But yeah, also remember, I am under a war deck still, so who knows, could be fun. Speaking of which, though, I want to point out that as of yesterday, we have decided to go on the offensive and have reinforced the war headquarters that have war decked us. It comes out on Friday. So if anybody's interested in participating in that attack or the potential defense, assuming that attack doesn't work out on, I think it's Monday, please hit me up. You know, if you do it soon enough today, we should be able to still get you into the war if you want to like join as a corporation. But as an individual, you can always just join the invited for the time being and come blow up a structure for us. How do they compare LP-wise to security? I will say this. You do not do distribution missions for its LP. We'll get to those. Like, again, I actually don't know the real, like, any answer I give to that question right this second is going to be just the answer that I got from talking to other people, right? So, you know, that's what we're looking into, is answering all these kind of questions for ourselves. But we do have one piece of news. Yeah, distribution for rep. That is the big reason to do distribution missions. But we're going to get into that in just a second. First, we have other news to cover, which is that CCP dropped a really interesting blog, I think. Or, yeah, I guess you call them blogs. Nope, that's not the right one. Really interesting little article today that might be worth talking about. Lower level distribution missions are great for grinding standings to 5 for level 4 missions. Exactly. We're getting there. Okay. A more inclusive Eve on, or a more inclusive New Eden, not Eve Online, New Eden. So this is actually a very interesting article. Just the kind of the TLDR is that this is a focus on demographics, especially women. But I haven't like read it word for word all the way through. So let's go ahead and dig into it. Obviously, these are some cool pictures from, I'm assuming FanFest. Yeah, that looks like FanFest. Women now make up a growing share of the global gaming community, particularly with social and multiplayer experiences. That's such a weird question or statement to say, because, like, okay, so obviously women in gaming have been a point of discussion for many, many years, all the way back from like the World of Warcraft days, where we actually saw an increasing number of, you know, women in the, you know, playing the game, participating in the game, compared to previous online games, you know, prior to 2004 or whatever. You know, we see kind of the expansion of gaming as a whole over the last several decades, and kind of acceptance into mainstream culture. And so, like, what was often seen as kind of this male-dominated activity has over time had more and more women in it. And that has not been without its issues. And I'm not necessarily even talking about it from the perspective of the women. I'm talking about it as like the gaming communities engaging, or like how they deal with this population or this demographic shift, right? Everything back from like Gamergate and more virulent, like toxic masculinity reactions to women in their spaces, especially with things like, say, fighting games or other stuff like that, where there's a lot of toxicity. And then when there's suddenly, not only are they having to deal with a, you know, a demographic that they're not used to having to deal with a lot, but also with that comes additional scrutiny on their own behavior, right? You know, what was acceptable kind of banter or behavior became less and less acceptable over time, and this caused a lot of tension, which is spilled out in things like Gamergate, and then later on in kind of the modern political world that we have in. Like, this is one of the things that we are wrestling with. And of course, Eve has wrestled with this too. But honestly, all things considered, I think that Eve has done a pretty decent job of it and has gotten a lot better, right? Now, there are definitely symptoms of this, especially back in the day. I remember, you know, what was it? I don't even think it was 10 years ago, when the idea of a pink-skinned ship was seen as like anathema to EVE Online, right? Like that the idea of like feminine things, not just women in the game itself, but like things that are seen as feminine, was seen as negative within EVE. And we can see now with the way that skins work, and with you know, a lot of that has changed and gone away. You know, we've kind of adapted to the fact that there are lots of different people that play this game, and they have lots of different interests. And, you know, we can't just say, "Grr, grim dark, you're not allowed here," right? So don't humanize my dark horror sci-fi game. Well, I mean, humanizing it is part of what makes it even more, oddly enough, by humanizing it, you can also make it more dark, right? Because, you know, bad things happening to real people. Either way. So But at the same time, like, while Eve has historically had a very low female population, women players, I want to say it's probably because of like the sandbox nature of Eve and the permanency and the single sharded environment of Eve, that, while people are allowed to be really bad and shitty to other people, overall, I actually see that there's a lot of space given to a lot of different people. I've seen many high quality FCs have been women. And there have been many, many movements, even back in the Pink Doesn't Belong in EVE Online days, where you have people like, I think it was the Hellcats. Like, there's an entire all-female EVE group. Now, one could argue that such a thing like that group existed because of that tension, right? Like, it was so hard to be a female player in EVE that they ended up kind of collecting together, commiserating, and kind of helping each other. But at the same time, like, a lot of organizations, while some organizations have been particularly toxic, a lot of organizations have actually been really open to female players potentially, including, like I said, FCs, a lot of especially NPSI fleets. And they talk about this in this article a little bit, but like, in general, one of the things that women bring to games, especially social games, is that they're much more practiced, trained, or, wired, however you want to argue it, to construct social spaces and create social cohesion, which is an incredibly important piece to EVE Online. And so, they do have a place. There has been some, obviously it hasn't been 100% smooth in the past, but I think that we've come a long ways, and I actually really like the idea that CCP is proudly declaring that they are, open to the female gender, because like I said, that kind of actually, they've never said this isn't for women, but they have absolutely suggested, or EVE Online has in the past had this kind of veneer that it is a very masculine game, right? Regardless. And so even if you wanted to be, if you wanted to play as a woman, you usually had to take on more masculine traits anyways, right? So, but either way, we're going to get into this article and see what they have to say. I do find it funny, like, that's what I'm saying, like the growing share thing. Like, this statement it automatically like comes across as being sus to me because it's so proportional. If like 4% of your population is female, and then suddenly 10% of your population is female, it's really easy to say, oh my God, we've doubled the percent of our women in our game. And you could say, oh my God, it's such a fastly growing program, or group, but like, that's only because it was so small to begin with, right? So but we're going to keep going. I'm not going to get hung up on the first line. The women gamers of EVE have been around since 2008. I think my wife was in that group. Again, like, there have always been support for women in EVE, but I think that I mean, let's be frank, some of that support was in and of itself kind of sexist, right? Here's a good example of that. In FanFest, right? At FanFest, which is the big get-together in Iceland. That's just my one monitor falling apart. Should be fine. Come on. Anybody want to get me a new video card? Anywho, I'm going to keep going. So, like, at FanFest, there was, I don't know if they still do it actually, there was like a special get-together for the spouses of EVE players. And that group was known as the Sisters of EVE, which is, clever, because the Sisters of EVE is a group within EVE. And so it's, cool that they're using that term. But if you think about it, right, like, the implication there is that the EVE player is male, he's going to the FanFest, and his wife/girlfriend is the sister of Eve, the hanger-on that's there to support their spouse or whatever, right? So it wasn't perfect, but it has, in my opinion, gotten better. We'll see what more they have to say about it. According to recent studies, they now constitute about 45% of the global gaming population. That's pretty significant. All things considered, women are gamers too. I think it's common sense that we should treat all people well. Don't be an asshole in game as well as IRL. Absolutely. Now, there is also this one thing where it's like, one of the issues is when people are trying to, in a game like Eve, that is so competitive, it naturally lends itself to toxicity. We talked about this a little bit the last couple of days too, where like to be an asshole to another person is actually a form of a strategy, right? Because if you can get them to be demoralized or tilted, they'll make a mistake and you can, capitalize on that. And so, if you're my enemy, I might be inclined to talk to say all sorts of hateful things to you. So in that environment, I can see somebody being sexist as a method of attacking. That's just a trait about that person that they can attack. So, yeah, either way, it's a complicated issue. And I think that EVE Online is actually a very interesting environment to work this out because it's a sandbox, because it has, history and stuff, and because we're all kind of in this together. Yeah, you can be an ass in game, but not in just not in text. Well, yeah. So, either way, the point is, women in gaming, very growing demographic, not just in EVE, but broadly, and that's just true. With 45% considering gaming an important part of their lives, dedicating up to 12 hours per week to gaming on average. So that's proper gaming. We, again, 10, 15 years ago, we would have been like, oh yeah, these women gamers, they're all playing Farmville on Facebook or whatever. But no, like increasingly we live in a world in which gaming is just a hobby people do, not just a male hobby, as it were. Right. So let's go ahead and look at some of this. So they did a big survey is what I think a lot of this came out of. And so here is some, I think they break this thing down more throughout the article. So we're going to come back to this in when we're a little bit further and see what, because I think I've seen these things later on. So we're going to see 3 in 4 women engage in online gaming regularly. Is that true? Wait, hold on. This is a link. Biters, okay, yeah, whatever, accept. Since 2018, Biters' annual Women's Gamer Study has been tracking the behaviors and experiences of women gamers across different markets. By the way, I'm just going to also claim, like, I get that I'm not the person to be talking about this, so if I say anything problematic, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can with this topic, but it's something worth discussing, I think. And if anybody wants to correct me, or especially if there's a woman in the audience who wants to hop on and tell me what they think about it, I'd love to hear it, but I'm just trying to be as fair as possible. Okay, so tracking the behaviors and experiences of women, comparing how they play, why they play, but also exploring issues around toxicity. So this really did find, wait, it found that two-thirds, what was it? 3 in 4, 3/4 of women play video games. I find that surprising. Once considered a niche pastime, gaming has grown to a mainstream form of entertainment in key markets like the UK and Germany. Biter data shows that over half of all consumers now engage with video games across various platforms. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying like, I think that that's, if you'd said 3 in 4 men engage in online gaming regularly, I would have been surprised. Yeah, I think that you're correct, Malak. That sounds more correct. It's not the way it's phrased, but saying that 3 in 4, 75% of female gamers or women gamers, whatever, engage in online gameplay regularly. That statement makes sense. And that somewhat tracks to because this says over half of all consumers now engage in gaming. That's a big difference between 50% and 75%. Huh. Yeah, I think it's because this is a survey of gamers. So let's just assume that that's what that means. Yeah, I think it's just a... Yeah, exactly. I'm not even saying like, oh, I don't believe that women are... I don't think that gaming is that popular. 50% of people play games. 75% of females that play games play online games. Those statements work for me somewhat. Any rate, as the gaming industry is increasingly embracing multiplayer and social gaming experiences, we can see that games can serve as platforms for social connectivity. Well, yeah, I mean, like, so the dark side of this is that the gaming industry is increasingly embracing multiplayer and social gaming experiences for two reasons. One, modern gaming industry, or really software capitalistic, the reality of things is that everybody wants their software to be a SaaS, right? Software as a service. Everybody wants to have a subscription. Everybody wants you to have to pay regularly instead of a one-time fee. And having a game be multiplayer is one of the best ways to ensure that it can be a SaaS. And then on top of that, there's a lot, I mean, let's be frank, there's a lot of games that without the social construct or without the social component aren't really games, right? Like if League of Legends wasn't an online game, how long would you play that gameplay loop? Probably not that long. There's a lot of games that rely on that, on people to be the content, that the game itself is not enough of a content for you to sit down and play it. It's not like Super Mario Brothers where you're just going to play through it and enjoy it for what it is. A lot of games expect to get their longevity out of an online experience. We'll just let the players make the content for us, right? Those are two very kind of pessimistic pieces to all of this, but they are true, that the industry is going towards multiplayer and online social gaming experiences, not just because it's good and people like it, but because it's good for them, the company. They get free content and they get ongoing payments. All right. EVE Online. I've heard about that game. EVE Online is a vast player-driven MMO. Oh, yeah, and EVE Online is no exception to that, right? Like, if EVE Online was a single-player game, there are single-player games like EVE, but if EVE itself was only a single-player game, even if you replace some of the mechanics of players with AI, I don't think it would be as interesting. The thing that makes EVE interesting is us doing stuff in it, right? Not the actual game itself. Also, those who fill online surveys are more likely to play online games. That's true, Thrans. There is certainly a selection bias here in how they do stuff. I'm only going to have to assume, because we're not going to dig too deep into this article, this one rather, the actual survey. I don't know what their methodology is. I don't know, like all these numbers could theoretically be contended, but either way, I think that what the discussion that we're pulling out of this is kind of independent of whether or not these numbers are exactly correct or you know, there's a bias to them. Would be true in Korea or Japan, I think. Yeah, actually, I mean, that's possible. This could very well be a Western perspective of things, but yeah, I don't know. All right, so next, EVE Online is a vast player-driven MMO where trust and community power everything from alliances to wars to entire economies. Those who have internet are more likely to fill online surveys. Yes, yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's also something that can be compensated for when doing a survey. That's why I was saying, like, it'd be nice to look at the methodology, but that's not, we're not trying to get that deep into the weeds on this one. In a galaxy this socially complex, understanding how different players experience the game is critical to making it more inclusive of all. This immediately jumps out to me as reminding me of, like, back when Ultima Online came out and they were trying to understand why people play Ultima Online, they originally thought that like people play Ultima, they would find a answer more or less, but that's where Bartle's taxonomy comes from with the 4 different kinds of players. Hey, what's up, Container? You know, the killers, socializers, explorers, and achievers, which we will probably talk more about later because of the socializers side of things. But yeah, so like about a third of the global population still don't have internet. So okay. We're gonna leave that statistic behind and keep going. All right. So the point is that like I've said this many times. MMOs, yeah, Container Records. That was Seventh Heaven yesterday. In MMOs. MMOs are, in my opinion, I've said this many times, are the bleeding edge of sociology and psychology research and study, right? You have a large population of people in a virtualized environment that you can modify and influence in order to study and see how humans behave. You know, UI, UX, software development. I talked about this before. Like the dark side of all of this stuff is like it's all about like control of human behavior, understanding human behavior. UI, what is it? UI design, or rather, design is understanding how people act when there's nobody there to tell them what to do. Right? Like, how do we make things in a way that's so intuitive that somebody can figure out how to do the right thing? And this is like everything from like how traffic, you know, tools work, you know, the fact that you press the button and that causes the traffic thing to get like, this is way bigger than just like, I'm not talking about just dark patterns. I'm talking about like, that's the entire study of design is understanding how humans interact with things naturally without instruction. So, okay, either way. The game has long embraced multiplayer social dynamics in the world, New Eden, and is referred to internally as a friendship machine. This is actually very true. This was a big thing. This is a big thing that CCP Ghost, who, by the way, vanished. I don't know where he went, but like this is a big thing that he was working on. This idea that external pressure and challenge, even trauma, will cause a group of people to become, you know, tighter knit and solidify friendships. That EVE Online, even though it is this incredibly harsh, hostile, no forgiveness kind of environment, a lot of the time, that very thing that kind of you would expect to bring out the worst in human behavior actually has this a tendency to cause incredibly tight, long-lasting friendship, very Band of Brothers-esque kind of thing. And this was something that they studied a lot, especially back in like I said, when CCP Ghost was around here. So like 2016 to 2020, give or take. And this even became like a whole research topic that included a college course in Iceland, I believe. So the friendship machine is a big thing of it. I met CCP Ghost. He was spooky as fuck, man. Like, I mean, he was nice. He was friendly, but like, so, okay. CCP Ghost was this guy who his job before joining the company was an interrogator. So like during the financial crisis of like 2008, I think it was, right? Like the world we had our global financial crisis, the banking crisis, right? One of the few countries to actually do anything about this and go after the people that were involved in it was Iceland. And one of the people who made that happen, who did the interrogations, that pulled together the information, that, you know, cracked it open so that way they could take action against the bad actors in this environment, was CCP Ghost. And when he succeeded in doing that, that's when Hilmar came and was like, hey, you want a new challenge? We've got a huge data set to figure out. And so he got hired to come on and figure out what makes us tick. And that's where a lot of these like understanding of player behavior and stuff that we see from 2018 onward kind of came from. In fact, one of the first things he ever did was, if you remember the Inception NPE, if you're that old, where the first NPE that was voiced and like had a story, that was his first like real experiment with this kind of stuff. At any rate, my point is that he's like totally a spook. And by that, I mean like proper spook. So, you know, when I met him, he's incredibly friendly, very, very smiles, but like, you could tell that he was staring into your soul, you know, he could see straight through you. It was spooky, but he was a great dude. I wonder if he's still around or what happened. Yeah, either way, unlike many competitive online games, EVE Online thrives on trust, diplomacy, and collaboration. This is actually a big piece of what I always talk about, which is that like EVE Online is a game in which trust is powerful, which is why EVE has to be designed the way it is, because in order for trust to have the amount of power that it has in this game, it must be able to be broken, right? Trust isn't trust if there's a guarantee behind it. So it's the difference between like, you know, contracts and like access within an alliance, right? Like a contract has a certain guarantee to it because it's a system within the game that's making sure. So you can do it with low trust. You can trade a contract with someone. You can buy something off of a contract from somebody you don't even know. You don't have to trust them. You can just trust the contract system to make sure that that works. But, you know, if you're going to try to if your friend suggests that they'll move your stuff for you to nullsec, and so you give it to them, now that's a trust thing. And that it's cheaper in the game. It's easy. It gets stuff done. So if that trust is successful, then the two of you are more powerful by the fact that you're working together. But that power comes at a cost, which is that trust can be broken. That trust could be wrongly placed. That person could steal all your stuff. And that's the balance to the power that trust and cooperation gives in EVE. He's probably doing something with a lot of blacked out tests. Yeah. He's the guy that, like, on his first presentation, he showed an x-ray of his leg, I think it was. And then his second presentation, he showed that his brain doesn't have wrinkles in it like everybody else's does. He's a very strange guy. Anyway, I gotta look into him again. Whether leading massive alliances, negotiating high-stake battles, or forging trade empires, players rely on each other, and relationships are incredibly valuable. Creating an inclusive EVE Online starts with the people behind the scenes. In recent years, we've taken intentional steps to make our workforce more representative of our player base. These efforts are bearing fruit. In 2024, 25% of our global workforce identified as women or non-binary, up from 19% in 2023, and over half of our new hires came from these groups. While there is still work to do, these milestones reflect our long-term commitment to inclusion, not just in the game, but at the heart of CCP itself. Can I just say, I know, I usually try to avoid being too political on this channel during streams, but I feel like this particular article drags it out of me. So I'm going to say that, like, especially in the year of our Lord 2026, I'm actually very appreciative that CCP is talking about this, right? You know, CCP is an Icelandic company, and there has been a lot of pullback towards things like diversity, equity, inclusion, or this idea of like this idea that, oh, our workforce was only 19% women and now it's 25% women or non-binary. Like, this really feels like a 2022 kind of statement, right? When like companies were trying to be diversified. So in this world in which there's a lot of pressure against this kind of thing, and a lot of companies are taking this as an opportunity to pull back on this kind of thinking, I actually really appreciate the fact that CCP are able to say, like, no, we're proud of the fact that we've increased our representation within our staff, and we're going to keep working on it. You know, good for them. I don't agree with just hiring someone because of their gender, but trying to find someone who fits both roles is okay. I agree with that. Look, you shouldn't hire somebody just because of their gender, right? But you can strive to see that the results of your process has come to an imbalanced like conclusion. And like, so let's say, just for ease of, whatever, 50% of your applicants are women, 50% of your applicants are male. In theory, your actual population that you pull from that should be 50-50 as well, right? If it's not, if there's 50% women, 50% men, and 90% of your actual hiring is men, then that means one of two things. It either means that women are inherently worse at that job. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean, but there's two conclusions to come to that. One is that women are inherently worse at that particular job, which maybe it's just biology. Maybe women are just worse at that particular job for whatever reason. Maybe the job involves being at least 5'8", right? This is actually a real thing. This is something that I researched when we did industrial organizational psychology, right? There are actual real things that can cause those kinds of conclusions that are actually honest. But a lot of the time, it actually shows a flaw in the hiring process or a flaw at some higher level of the system, right? It may be only 10% of your population is women in spite of 50% of the applications because most of the female applicants don't have the correct training. And that's because there's not a lot of women in STEM research, right? So there could be, it's not just oh, that company is bad for not hiring. But my point is that while you're doing your whole hiring process, one of the things that's worth paying attention to is those results, right? If your applicants are 50-50 and your results are 90-10, it is worth at least looking into and seeing whether or not there's anybody, because there's a lot of people that are qualified for something. To imply that somebody would be hired in spite of their not being qualified is, I think, disingenuous. I would like to think that there's plenty of people within the pool that is qualifying. Does that mean that theoretically somebody might be hired over somebody who's more qualified? I mean, maybe, but qualified is often something that is so hard to quantify that it's hard to say oh, this person is more qualified than this person. You can argue it all day, but the point of the matter is that as a person who's trying to maintain an entire staff pool, there are multiple factors, both individual and meta level factors that are worth considering. There's actually an interesting story. Hiring because they like your sports team is also pretty bad. Exactly. There's a fun story actually. I have these 3 stories from game development about, or not game development, but software development about in a weird way, sexism in software development, accidental sexism. So for instance, Amazon back in 2015, 2016, this is such a tricky one to talk about. Wow. All right. So back in 2015, 2016, Amazon, before the modern era of AI, in the earlier days of AI, they wanted to create an AI that would allow them to process applicants, right? So they fed in all of their their history of applicants, all the applicants that they have had, and their status, whether or not they got hired, whether or not they stayed on, whether or not they got fired, et cetera, right? And the idea is that this AI was going to help filter out people to pick out the best candidates first. But the problem is that they figured out it scans. AI is a pattern-seeking machine, so it's looking through all of the data, and it's looking for indices that might constitute success versus failure, right? And one of the things that it naturally picked up on was that if the name of the applicant was female, suggested that they were female, that the AI was more likely to reject them. That the AI actually saw being male as a positive indicator for hiring. Not because this is actually necessarily true. Again, I don't actually believe that women are biologically worse at software development than men are, but the combination of the relationship to women in STEM, and more importantly, the historical hiring practices of Amazon taught the AI to be sexist, right? There was this inherent bias that they weren't even necessarily aware of, that the AI picked up on and amplified. So they actually had to shut it down and not use it, right? But that's my point, is that even if you're being honest about stuff, because of factors, there can be these kinds of discrepancies that pop up. And so when you're looking at it from a meta level, right, you evaluate each individual person on their own merits and qualification. But at the same time, when you look and you see, you know, half of our population are women, but only a quarter of our, like, or 19% of our development staff are women. The problem is that it's not just about individual qualification to make the game. It's also the company's qualification to make the game, right? And so having a more diverse development group, or more importantly, a more representative development group of the kind of community that you have and or want to have, will allow for better development, right? Like, we've seen this actually a lot in the gaming industry. As more women have entered into game development, they bring in with it a different perspective, a different understanding, and a different, like, angle to tackle the problems with, and that has actually been incredibly successful. One of the interesting examples of actually from Eve actually is, like, honestly, some of our rock star developers from CCP have all been women. I mean, CCP Seagull, CCP Affinity, CCP Aurora, CCP Karker. You know, these are a significant number of the developers that actually, like, took a step back and was like, how can we take this to the next level? Not just continue to iterate on the same stuff that we're doing, but, like, actually improve stuff, improve the UI, improve the systems, improve the social connections, improve the tools that people have. A lot of those, improve faction warfare. A lot of those decisions came from female developers. And so, you know, if nothing else, if you don't have a diverse population within your development staff, then you don't have a diverse amount of perspective in your development staff, or you risk having a limited perspective within your development staff. So on a meta level, I think that this is a good thing to work on. All right. Maternity leave may have also been a factor if the AI see women having shorter average time in role. Nope. I understand that you'd say that, or, like, that is an interesting position. I don't have the actual study that I was looking at, you know, because that was years ago. But no, that was not it. It was literally just historically they didn't hire women as often, and therefore the AI picked up on that and said that women aren't hireable. It was literally just that. All right. Either way, that's what I have to say about it. Let's continue to see what CCP has to say about it. Women of Eve. Creating an inclusive Eve also means listening to players. In August 2023, the Women of Eve survey was launched to gain insight as to how gender influences play style, social dynamics, and overall experiences in New Eden. Below are some key insights from the survey and how they are being used to make New Eden more inclusive, accessible, and welcoming to all. So this was done in 2023, so 2+ years ago. The survey, the Women of Eve survey, gathered insight from 8,833 active capsuleers, combining player-reported data with in-game telemetry to paint a clearer picture of how different demographics engage with New Eden. Respondents identified their genders as follows: 89.3% male, 1.9% non-binary, 3.5% female, and 5.2% prefer not to answer. And this seems about right. And this goes back to what I was saying before, where it's like, well, if, you know, I guess the straw man counter argument to this is like, well, Ash, you just said that your demographics of your developers should match your community. So if the community is 90% male, then shouldn't the development staff be 90% male? I said, or want your demographics to be, right? Like, this could be a reinforcing thing. It could very well be that historically because the staff of CCP have been mostly male, that's what has allowed them to do things like say that pink has no business in EVE Online, which then discourages women, right? Like women, there's nothing stopping women from joining EVE Online. So there's got to be something stopping them from engaging with it as much as males, right? So figuring that out and seeing what to do about it, that's an interesting challenge. Also, from a game company perspective, like this just reeks of an untapped demographic, right? 50% of all gamers are female. 4% of our gamers are female. That's millions of females, millions of women that could be an EVE player that aren't. Hey, if there are more women players, then we have twice the average. Exactly, Malak. Like, you know, if you could just increase, you don't lose a male customer for every female customer you get. So if we could capture more of the you know, female population, if we could make EVE into a game that is seen publicly as a game for women as well as men, this number could go up, and all of our numbers could go up, right? It's all about money. Well, I mean, we are talking about a company, so you absolutely must have that. Like, that's going to be the most persuasive argument to the company itself. Like, as a player, we can talk about its impact on the game, and like gameplay and design development and social communities, blah 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 blah. But like, we got to also remember that this is a company operating with company logic. And yeah, player numbers is something that both players and company wants. That's true. Now, it'd be a lot different if we were like, no, Havoc, I agree. And I think that the version of it that you're thinking about would be like, oh man, on average, women spend 3 times as much on skins than men do. We need more women because they spend more money per person. Like, that would be an argument that I would find be like, that's problematic. But that's not what we're talking about. We're just saying like, hey, EVE has historically been pretty hostile to women, and as a result of it, we don't have very many of them. If we made the game more accessible to women, we will unlock a whole different demographic of people who will come into the game. And because EVE is a giant sandbox and it's actually multiple games all put together, we can have a space for gameplay that will attract more women and have that just be an aspect of the game. You know, doing an entire expansion on mining and therefore getting a lot of people excited and coming back to the game on mining didn't stop people from doing dread bombs. Both of these things exist in the game. So you can actually add a whole different gameplay for a whole different demographic. What if they changed PI to be a full-scale Farmville game? Let's go super sexist and be like, that's how we're going to get our women in, right? We're going to make a colony building sim, and that's the thing that they're going to engage in, right? Does that change how many people and how well you engage with faction warfare, mission running, exploration? Nope, not at all. It just makes PI more interesting, which is better for everyone, not just the women that they're hoping to engage with it, right? So, yeah. Hacking Candy Crush, exactly. Yeah, we're going to turn the hacking minigame into a match 3 game. That would unironically keep me hooked. You never go full PI. All right. While female and another good example of this is like anytime a game company works on accessibility, not anytime, but most of the time when a game focuses on accessibility, that benefits everyone, right? Whether that's colorblind mode, whether that's speech to text or text to speech, like any kind of accessibility, just because there are demographics that need those accessibility options in order to function doesn't make those accessibility options, you know, like that can still be good for people that don't necessarily need those accessibility options, but like appreciate them anyways, right? When will CSP allow me to trap my PI workers into a pool with no ladder? Hell yes, exactly. If we are better, we will get a benefit is way better than What can we do to benefit the company even being worse? Yes, I do. That is one of the things. This doesn't feel like it's like, oh yeah, in shitification, let's figure out how to get more money for less. That is not what this is. In fact, it's actually the opposite. They're putting in a lot of work to make this work. I mean, a lot of this comes back to the primary barrier of Eve, which is turning the solo player into a court member. It's true. And honestly, this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I'm hoping that this article kind of suggests it. The real big problem that I keep running into with Eve is the lack of good cooperative gameplay, right? We have the Abyss, we have home fronts, and we have like faction warfare. But if like me and my buddy just want to go and do some stuff, like it's actually really tricky to find something that's like the right thing to do, right? Because even like you can do multiplayer missions, but ultimately you could also just solo them. The Abyss is fine, but what's odd is that I find actually the Abyss, Frigate Abyss, almost less interesting than Cruiser Abyss, because most of the time the whole group has to kind of focus on the same thing. I don't know. It's complicated. I've been a little bit frustrated at like the act of like trying to figure out things for people to do and how difficult it is to actually do that. Even the best like group activities right now, a lot of it has to do with like getting lucky and scanning down the correct ore site that are really rare or something. And sometimes you just can't do it. So, like if this means that there's better gameplay for 2 or 3 people, or at least more consideration about it. One of the things that Malak and I were talking about yesterday was the fact that like so much content in Eve is so built around not allowing people to like maximize it by sharing it, right? So like events, for example, the fact that all of the event tracks require like a certain number of killing blows, and then you have to get or not killing blows, but max damage, and then also the battleship at the end of the rat. Like, would it really have harmed anyone if in these events everyone that participates in a kill, not just the top damage, but every single person that is either helped somebody who did do damage or did any kind of damage to the rat gets credit for killing the rat? So now you can bring in 2 people into a site and it still like advances the track for both people. You still have to share the items, right? Only one person gets the loot, but there's so much of the game that like makes somebody else coming in a bad thing for you. Like you're not happy when someone else comes into your site. It'd be so much better if somebody coming into your site was like, oh, hey, cool, we're going to get it done faster. And that's okay, right? So, and I actually talked to CP Ghost about this when it came to emerging conduits back in like 2019 or whatever, where it's like, the problem is that when somebody shows up, I immediately don't like them because they're taking from me. There's so much of the game where it's like I was playing Star Wars The Old Republic. I go up to a dude, he's fighting the boss, I just tag it, and I got credit for it too. Like, cool, I didn't have to do the work for the boss, but at the same time, like, is it really that bad that I got to do that? Does it really hurt the game that much that I got an easy time of it for this boss because someone else was already doing the work? As long as it doesn't take away from them, I'd say no, right? So finding a way for being in a group to not be a detriment is, in my opinion, like good. Or like if I'm out doing an activity and I run into somebody else that's doing that activity, there are definitely activities that should be competitive. But there should definitely be activities that when I run into somebody else, I was like, hey, you want to do it together? Mining is somewhat like this. Like somebody shows up and you're like, hey, you want boosts? But even that's very one-sided, right? I offer him a bonus. I don't get anything out of it. He just gets boosts. So it's not quite perfect. Either way, just dropping by for a sec. I got a thorax. Should I put turrets on it or lasers? Absolutely hybrids. Probably rails most of the time. Depends on what you're wanting to use it for. I've had so many guys ask if I was a girl or a young guy when they first heard me on comms. Oh God, yeah. That can always be a problem. Like not a guy, and not a girl, not, wait. My response is always not a guy and not young. Well, there you go. I miss emerging conduits so much. All right. While female and non-binary representation in this sample was relatively small, the results still offer valuable insights and trends worth exploring. I also will note that I think that this is still a higher percentage than previous times that they've done this. We're getting there. While female and non-binary representation in the sample was relatively small, blah, blah, blah. All right. As with all surveys, results may be influenced by response bias. Who chooses to participate in sampling limitations, i.e. underrepresentation of certain groups? Of course, right? Like, who's going to actually respond to this survey? Again, it's got not survivor bias, but selection bias. The questions were targeted towards understanding the differences in player behavior, as well as social interactions between genders. Responses were color-coded by gender to better illustrate trends: purple for male, pink for female, and yellow for non-binary. Okay. EVE Online is known for fostering deep social bonds among players. When asked whether they had made friends in New Eden, the vast majority of responded yes. 86% of female players, 83% of non-binary players, 80% of male players. So this does show that in general, based on this survey, female players are more likely to make deep social bonds within EVE Online. However, 2 points to this. One, these numbers also show that it just proves that EVE is good at making social bonds regardless of gender. But also, this goes back to that idea that, like, it is actually hostile enough to be a woman in EVE that, just like with the Hellcats, they may tend to build deeper social bonds as a bit of necessity. And there's also probably survivor bias in this, right? In the fact that a female player that fails to build a deep social bond is more likely to become an X player than a male that fails to build a deep social bond, because on your own, the female is likely to receive more targeted vitriol for being their gender than a male. And therefore, without actually successfully, the females that did not successfully foster a deep social bond, more likely to get, like, driven out of the game, right? I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but I'm just saying, like, that's another thing to think of when it comes to these sorts of statistics. All right. Notably, female players were the most likely to form friendships, reinforcing research that suggests women often engage in gaming through social connections and cooperation. That is, I mean, that is true more broadly, you know. So, all right. As Grey Gal's amazing, by the way. I don't know if you know her. She's this older lady who has basically been running EVE get-togethers for as long as I can remember. The only way a fleet really does succeed is if everyone trusts not just what the fleet commander is saying and deciding, but everyone that they're flying with. And of course, that's the root of what most of the friendships are built. The fleet is the core of the social experience in EVE. That Grey Gal's a smart lady. Playstyle preferences. This social interaction among non-male players extended to playstyle preferences. When asked whether they preferred playing solo or in a group, female players showed the strongest preference for group play. 30% of female players, 26% of non-binary players, 22% of male players. Again, I feel like this probably has a certain amount of, like, okay, well, women are more likely to be social creatures in an online game than men. But also, I suspect that women that are more into solo play are less likely to get hooked into the kind of solo play that EVE Online has, right? Because you got to remember, like, they're not surveying X players. They're only surveying players that successfully have stayed with the game. All right. This reinforces findings of the broader gaming research, which suggests that women and non-males are more likely to engage in cooperative play than men. So we can see purple is men, so 49% prefer solo. Is that right? No. Both equally is 49%. So yeah, see, men in this survey appear to be more flexible, right? There's men in both, in the solo and group, but also the largest demographic of, yeah, both equally. Whereas women are more likely to only play or only enjoy it if it's group play, not enjoy the solo game experience. That may be something about them as women. It also may be something about the gameplay that are offered as a solo experience versus group experience. When asked about the most appealing aspects of EVE, social interactions ranked highest among female players, 34%, when compared to male, 39%, non-binary, 24%. This further reinforces a trend that women in EVE prioritize cooperative and community-driven experiences. We can do it just like everyone else. Kashal, EVE Online player, while talking about only having 2 female fleet commanders, the rest being male, and that she would like to have more women in leadership positions. It's interesting because, like, on the one hand, yes, this is absolutely correct. On the other hand, I have found that historically, women are overrepresented in fleet, in like command positions. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying, like I said, I've known many women. I've known more women that play the game and are fleet commanders than women who play the game and aren't fleet commanders. I'll put it that way. Like, and again, I don't know if this is a selection bias thing or a social drive for social cohesion thing or what, but or a chance to prove yourself, like Kashal kind of hints at here. But it is true that, like, I bet if you looked at the demographic of women that are doing things like FCing versus men that are FCing as a portion of the population, you'll see that women are actually more likely to step up and do those high things, or, you know, those higher end extreme leadership positions. Surprising, our female responders were more likely to engage in PvP combat than other groups. 22% of female players prefer PvP, 19% of non-binary players prefer PvP, and 18% of male players prefer PvP. This is actually very interesting. But I think that this is actually, like, because obviously the kind of the knee-jerk sexist view of things would be like, oh yeah, women aren't as aggressive as men, therefore they won't want to do PvP as much, and this definitely flies in the face of that. But again, going back to that idea of like demographics, selection biases, etc., you know, what is true, or what could be true, is that the majority of women that do decide to play EVE and do decide to stick with EVE are more masculine in their behavior, are more willing to, like, they're women who are trying to prove themselves in a man's world, as it were, and so are more likely to have, I guess, what we would traditionally think of as like tomboyish kind of behaviors or desires. But also, let's be frank, as I just said, most group PvE kind of sucks. I mean, they're interesting novelties. Home fronts are a cool thing to do for a little while, but like PvE has a tendency to kind of turn into work and be kind of boring or repetitive. And so if you are going to focus on group stuff, you're going to tend to probably prefer the PvP stuff, because again, going back to the very, very first thing that we were saying, you're relying on people to create more interesting content rather than allowing these like repetitive, sometimes boring PvE scenarios to kind of be the thing that's worth doing. Yeah. In other MMOs, I've seen women want to be tank or DPS rather than healers. Well, yeah, that was interesting. That's all. That's a complicated thing. I mean, I definitely have known women that want to become tanks and stuff. I definitely, well, actually, well, you know, I definitely know a lot of women that want to be healers and stuff too. Yeah. I'm not going to try to be very, like, what is it called? When you use like a specific, like, I knew a woman who is a tank, therefore, well, what is it? Not antidote. Is it an antidote? Yeah, whatever. All right. While this changes the stereotype that women favor non-combat roles in games, the sample size for female players was smaller, so these findings shall be interpreted with caution. Yeah, and like I said, a lot of this is going to be factored with the kind of, like, the women who do decide that EVE Online is the game for them. What reasons does EVE give them to engage with it, right? So we see here. Oh, this is, wait, is this literally the exact same chart? Solo versus group play. No, this is PvE versus PvP. Got it. I also find it interesting that, like, So again, non-binary players, 19% of non-binary players prefer PvP. Society is hostile, especially gaming society can be hostile to both females and non-binary people. And so a desire to do PvP can be a resistance against that hostility, right? And yeah, I do find it interesting that the largest demographic that prefers PvE is male. I don't know why that is. I don't know why that is. I just like blowing people up. Syliana, EVE Online player, after being asked how a typical day in New Eden looks for her. Yep. I will say that EVE Online has traditionally been a really good place for women to break the traditional norms of things. Player identity. Next, participants were asked what type of gamer that they associated themselves most with. The choice was between hardcore, competitive, social, or casual. Interestingly, the female respondents were more likely than male players to identify as both hardcore and social gamers, challenging assumptions about how women engage in games like EVE. While 45% of female respondents identify as social gamers, 33% also choose hardcore, compared to 24% of male players. The non-binary players landed in the middle between female and male players, so it seems that female players are more likely to identify as hardcore and social players than their male counterparts. So we can see here, okay, so the 46% of males identify themselves as casual, where 45% of females report themselves as being social. Again, like, this kind of shows a little bit of what we would think, but at the same time, these percentages show more about how we're similar than how we're different, you know? Like, we can be like, oh, 46% of males like this versus 40, but like, really, it's like, the difference is only 10%, right? Between 45 and 40, or 40, well, 12%. So, like, mostly it's just, this tells me more about EVE than anything else, right? Like, and again, this, I actually keep looking at this as the kind of players that accept EVE. The stat that isn't in on this, in this post so far, is the retention rate of EVE in general, right? Because the missing demographic here are the people within these categories that didn't get into EVE, that bounced off of EVE, and why, right? That's the thing that I'm very interested in, because that's how you get this 3% number to go up if you wanted to. All right. Trust and comfort in the community. A strong majority of players, regardless of gender, reported feeling comfortable about asking for help in game. That's kind of cool. Like, this is actually kind of surprising to me that 72% of males feel comfortable with asking for help. Because, again, if we're just going to go with stereotypes, then, you know, we would actually assume that men would be less likely to ask for help, right? We have that neat, you know, there's that stereotype of men never want to ask for directions. But this actually shows that men are more comfortable with asking for help. Now, this could be, again, because of expectations, right? A male in EVE may expect a positive result if they ask for help, whereas a woman or a non-binary person, even more so, may expect a negative response, because this is comfortable about asking for help. This is about your idea of what it's like to ask for help. And so if you are used to people being hostile to you because you're a female gamer or because you're trans, then you're more likely to not be comfortable with asking for help. There's a video I watched about a guy who bounced off EVE just because he couldn't use WASP. But you can. Do you think that there should be more things to construct that require tremendous resources? I would love to see the manufacturing side of EVE take off for new players, but the market is very saturated. I don't think that big projects are necessarily the correct answer because like the larger, more organized groups will be able to capitalize on it. I would just jumping on this just randomly. What I would say is a project that could continue to be built up is going to be the more interesting solution, right? So like, we're going to build ourselves a Raitaru or whatever, right? That's a pretty big project, structures, you know, whatever. But like, wouldn't it be more interesting if you could build a place for your guys and then you can upgrade it in various different ways? That, like, this goes back to the Vanguard. One of the things I'm excited about with Vanguard is the bastions, right? Like, I want something that we can collectively work towards. I don't just want to be able to build 5 Raitarus because I want to sell them for ISK, because then I could just do anything I want to sell for ISK, and I have lots of ISK, so there's no real motivation to that. But if I could like build a structure and us as a community continue to work on it to improve it and get it like tiered up, you know, so that way our home is our home, and this stuff, like, you know, you could go and check out your Vanguard, your wall of trophies, that all of the trophies that your corporation has gotten over time. You know, that's the kind of buildup that I need when it comes to something that we can work together on as a community, because everything in EVE is just mostly about ISK. And so it's like, well, but I could just, do you know how much ISK I have right now? Building up your Raitaru or Asbel or Sodia would be cool. Exactly, exactly. I think that there isn't enough of that kind of thing. In my opinion, EVE actually needs more syncs in that regard, and it'd be cool if they were monumental. I agree. Trophies, cosmetic stuff, build statues. I don't care. Billboards. Give me customizable named crew with social interactions I can manage for my ship. Exactly. That's my thing, is that like, it's funny because like the whole shipper ammo, like the death is a serious matter has caused us to reflexively psychologically try to like not emotionally invest in our stuff. But in spite of that, there's always a desire to do that in people. So the best example of this that I know of is like, one of the things I've asked for a long time is when you mutate when you mutate your drones, right? Like there's abyssal mods, right? You can also get abyssal drones. When you roll a drone, when it tells you once it gives you the results, it should give you an opportunity to name that drone. And then that drone always just shows that name. People have been wanting to name their drones forever. It's a terrible idea. Don't get invested in your drones. That's a bad idea. But like, I think that the abyssal rolling process is the perfect moment for people to literally put an identity onto a thing and let people become emotionally attached to this. This goes back to Aura, right? Let's let people become emotionally attached to Aura by having that be the main source of information instead of the agency or show info windows. These are things that I talk about a lot, right? Allow me to build a full world PI colony. Unironically, making PI into more of a Farmville kind of thing, or at least a city building thing, would be really cool. Someone can steal your drone and ransom them back to you. Exactly. Oh my God. Wouldn't that be cool? Kill marks get people emotionally invested in ships. This is why I've said that every kill report should tell you what skin was on the ship and how many kill marks it had on the ship at the time of death. Like the kill mail should be a record of that ship, because like when a ship is destroyed, that's when that record matters the most, right? Because up until then, you're still working on it. So if we could even see how many kill marks were on a ship when it gets destroyed on a kill mail, that would be a huge thing to letting people kind of emotionally invest in such things. Maybe you could build NPC stations where NPCs live. You need to keep them alive like pets. Yeah. What if you could like make it your own agent? Now, granted, the agent is just going to give the missions. And like, you guys, what if the way that you do missions nowadays would be like you would build your own structure and then install an agent in it, and then everybody within the alliance needs to do missions for this agent, and that will level up that agent. It will make them a level 2 agent, and then a level 3 agent, and a level 4 agent. Like, that would be cool. And then when somebody blows up your structure, you can evacuate the agent and move them to the next structure. So now you get a piece of that progress that is preserved even if that structure gets blown up. All right. But again, so going back to what I was saying earlier, this is what's so cool about thinking about diversity, right? Which is that, like, this isn't just about being stereotypical about women or what. This is, all of these ideas that are coming out of this are just about making the game better and better for everybody, making the game interesting, making the game worth emotionally investing into. So this isn't just about capturing more women as a demographic, but it's using that as a lens to look at the problem, to see how we can shore up the pieces that are weak in the game's design. All right, but the experience isn't equal for everyone. Nearly 63% of women and non-binary individuals said they've experienced only girl syndrome, a term describing the isolation and pressure of being one of the only women in a male-dominated group. This is actually literally why the Hellcats was made, where they may have been exceptions, competitors, or representatives of all women. Have you experienced only girl syndrome? 62% of women say yes. And, or is that? Yeah. So the reason why this is important, bringing space-based goods to a planet to improve the planet resource output, there's so many cool ideas for how to improve PI. It's actually the #1 thing that I've always thought about is, like, I've even thought about using or like making my own mobile app that would give like a proof of concept of a PI that used your actual skills in PI via API in order to like allow you to build your own city. But I never actually built it or anything. But like I've been thinking about that since ever, because like when I first joined the game, PI was brand new. I actually joined in Tyrannus, which was the expansion that introduced PI. But so this thing here actually gives me an interesting idea, which is that yeah, Factorio, exactly. Factorio would be great. Basically a Factorio type game. Yeah. Okay. So this here actually speaks to a piece of that Bartle's taxonomy that I mentioned earlier. So Bartle was tasked with figuring out why people play Ultima Online, and he figured out that they basically, like, your motivations, not people can have multiple of these things. I'm just going to say off the top of your head, like these are like clusters of motivations as to why people play an online game. And so that's he used a deck of cards, so hearts, spades, clubs, and diamonds, with diamonds being achievers, spades being explorers, clubs being killers, and hearts being socializers, right? So achievers are people that want to complete things, finish tasks, have the most, make their numbers go up, etc. Explorers want to discover new things, test mechanics, find new strategies, and discover novel experiences. Killers want to impact other players. Interesting, like killers is honestly one of the worst named ones, because a lot of healers in games, like healing in games is how I get my killer instinct going, because it's about impacting other players regardless of whether or not they want to be impacted. And of course the #1 way that happens often in games is by killing them, but like saving the day and rescuing someone is actually also in the killer camp, because it's impacting other players. But either way, and then socializers are socializers, right? So what they found was explorers have a tendency to suppress killers, because killers want to hurt people in general, and explorers have enough. First of all, they don't really care if they die often, because they're off doing crazy stuff, so they're often having bad things happen to them in wild ways. And so having them, like, if they get killed by a killer, they don't care as much, so that doesn't give them as much of a reward for killing them, for the killer. But also explorers often know very niche strategies, and so have a tendency to turn things around on the killer and end up getting them instead. And there's nothing a killer likes worse or hates more than having that impact like reflected back at them, right? To get killed when they were trying to do the killing. That makes them very mad. So in general, explorers suppress killers and killers suppress achievers, right? Because achievers want to do something, and if an achiever is mining and a guy comes and ganks them, that's going to make them want to stop playing. They're going to stop wanting to achieve their goal, or at least some of them will. And so in general, killers suppress achievers. And Eve, I've said for a long time that Eve has had a problem with the fact that like it has hollowed out its achievers world. This was back in like 2015 or whatever, where like, because like killers dominated the discussion of things, right? Because a lot of people that weren't killers had to stay kind of quiet in most public spaces in EVE, because if you were too loud about how much you love industry, then all the killers will target you. Now things like war deck changes and just the general demographic changes of EVE over the years have definitely changed that. So now it isn't as crazy to be an outspoken, loud, member of the community while still being like a mission runner or an explorer or whatever, or an industrialist. But in the end, EVE has mostly focused on ISK and territory control for being the achiever stuff. You know, in the fact that, like, a good example of this, again, killers suppress achievers. So when CCP first tried to put in achievements in the activity tracker, right? The community was incredibly loud that they wanted no rewards added into the activity tracker, because they didn't want it to feel like they're being obligated to go and finish the tasks. Now, that position to have is a very anti-achiever position, because achievers want to get achievements. They want to complete the tracks. They want to do good things. And so that the community rising up and saying, we do not want there to be rewards for this stuff, was very much like the voice of the killers shouting down the desires of the achievers, right? And, you know, it took many years for CCP to kind of break free of that. And now we have things like opportunities and the Air Career Program, which are kind of a second iteration of this process that do have rewards to it. And as it turns out, oh my God, it has changed our EVE Online demographic, and has actually increased the amount of actively playing players in the game, because we're now supporting achievers. And that's a whole population of gameplay styles that was not just ignored, but were actively, like, as a community, acted against prior to, say, 2019. So, okay, that's those three. Socializers, though, what's interesting about socializers is that socializers reinforce socializers, right? So they don't necessarily care about killers or even achievers or even explorers. They'll support those people, but that's not why they're there. They're to build the community, and the community itself doesn't actually care about those which of those other three tasks or things that community is built around. And so the point with socializers when it comes to shaping an MMO is that you need a certain threshold of socializers, because then it becomes self-reinforcing. Socializers need other socializers to socialize with. Otherwise, they get not distraught, discouraged. And so that's what we see here, right? The only girl syndrome problem isn't actually a problem with the women or even with the game per se. This is 100% the result of, where is it? This number here. If only 3.5%, if only 5% of the community is female or non-binary, then the chances that you are the only female or non-binary within your community, your sub-community within the game, is much, much higher. If we tripled the percentage of the community that was female, if the population was 15% women and non-binary, then the chances that they would not be the only woman or non-binary in the group goes up. So this is basically the point is that, as I said, having enough socializers makes it self-reinforcing in a positive feedback loop, but not having enough socializers actually has a negative feedback loop, right? If there's not enough people building social communities, then there's not enough social community for the people that want to build social communities. They go somewhere else to build their social communities. So, yeah. The results provide meaningful insight to the lived experience of women and non-binary players. This is also important, and while that is a very dry way of putting it, it is also something to recognize about the challenges that they face, right? Where, like, again, this is self-reinforcing. So yes, this is because there's only 3% or 5% of the community is women or non-binary. That's what's causing this. But also this is causing the population of women and non-binary to be lower, potentially, because the people that aren't joining the game, EVE Online is sold as this, like, you know, massive fleet battles and industry and nerds and spreadsheets in space and all these kinds of things. Nobody outside of EVE, it's not really pitched that much about how well of a community you can work into. In fact, if anything, EVE Online community outside of EVE has a very negative stereotype within the world. And so, you know, this only gets changed by changing the way that the world, not just EVE players, but like gaming in general, views EVE Online. And that will take a long time. You know, it reminds me of like when Valkyrie first came out and there were people playing Valkyrie, like, you know, content creators and stuff. There were a lot of people that were very dismissive of it just because it is EVE Online. EVE Online has this incredibly negative, hostile, violent, psychopathic reputation within our community that we know is not actually reflective of the community as a large, but it is what people know about EVE Online. And so a lot of people won't check out EVE Online because of it. And the people that do go and check out EVE Online, this is what I like to say about like newer players and understanding how new players work. Oftentimes, a newer player comes into EVE Online and they know two things. They only know two things out of the entire, for sure, about the game. One is that they don't know anything and they'll get punished for anything that they don't know. They don't understand. It's a brutal game and they don't know. And so they're going to get hurt for that. And, or maybe that is the second thing. Shit, I just fucked that up. Oh yeah. And the second thing is that you can't trust anybody, right? I don't know anything about the game. And it's a game in which, like, you can make a mistake because you don't know. And I can't trust anybody. But I have to learn from somebody in order to get to understand the game. But I can't trust anybody. So I'm not going to trust anybody. Like, that's the only two things that they know. And those two things are contradictory, which is a big reason why a lot of people fail EVE, especially their first time. Most players that play EVE, most players that stick with EVE after 2.5 times on average of like quitting the game and then coming back. And I think that one of the biggest reasons why people don't hook into it their first time, especially, is because of the preconceived notions about what EVE is that they go into it with. The only game where being scammed is part of the game. I wouldn't say it's the only game, but you know, the psychopath simulator, spreadsheets in space. These are the negative stereotypes of EVE players, and it hurts EVE. Even like I said, Vanguard, Valkyrie. Anytime CCP comes out with anything, you see people immediately dismissive of it because of the reputation that EVE has. Quit EVE so many times just to return half a year to a year later. Yep. And that's why I say, like, having a negative experience and quitting the game is actually not necessarily bad, because like somebody comes into the game, expects it to be fine, gets ganked, gets mad, quits the game. There's still a splinter in their head that like EVE beat them. And so on a, you know, eventually, be it months, years, whatever later, hold on a second. They're going to want to like take another stab at the challenge. But now when they come back, they have a better understanding of how EVE really works, right? And so they're more successful, or more likely to be successful, than when you come in blind. All right, the results provide meaningful insight. FanFest panels, an opportunity for real-life discussion. At FanFest 2023, the world's largest gathering of EVE players, we hosted a panel to open dialogue around survey findings. Players and industry experts came together with share perspectives and propose ways to make EVE more inclusive and welcoming. Watch the full panel discussion here. Look, I know people really want me to get into distribution missions, so we're going to just breeze past this one already, because otherwise we're never going to get past this, because this is a hour-long discussion. If people are interested in us watching this video and doing a reaction video to it, please let me know. Well, I mean, to be fair, Malak, again, not to get too political, but the bigots in general have been pretty well empowered over the last several months for reasons that I'm not going to discuss at the moment. In 2025, we took things further by organizing an inclusivity-focused panel at FanFest. With players and EVE developers, this session brought together developers, including CCP Okami, our game design director, and CCP Mercury, our senior UI UX researcher, alongside notable EVE players who lead or participate in initiatives that make the game more inclusive. When there is another discussion. This one is also an hour long. The discussion covered a range of topics: gender-based inclusivity, accessibility, localization, and how in-game corporations and alliances can create a safer, more supportive environment for their members. By highlighting both developer perspectives and live player experiences, the panel offered practical insights to making New Eden more welcoming for all. And I do appreciate the fact that, like, so opportunities and fleet and corp goals and all those sorts of things has allowed us to kind of identify more as a community and work together on things, but it is still like working together in a very asynchronous way, right? Like I can put up an opportunity because I need a whole bunch of ore or minerals, and people can turn that in and they get paid, and that's fine, but that doesn't actually require me and that person to actually interact or work together or me help them. Now, granted, I can take the next step to be like, oh, this guy's doing a whole bunch of mining. Maybe I should make sure to get boosts or whatever. And that's where the player action to it is. But my point is that the systems themselves still don't actually support cooperative PvE gameplay in the same sort of way. Besides mining, which is one of those things that one of the reasons why we keep going back to that as a community within the Convocation period. Speaking of which, remember, our structure is currently reinforced. So if you want to help out, hit me up. What made this panel impactful was the number of cat ears on stage. No, was the open dialogue with the audience. Players shared personal stories and candid reflections on inclusion within EVE. EVE is not inclusive as long as they keep making fun of cat ears. I'm sorry. You know why the Glente have been having such a hard time of it? Do you know why Celis Agard is doing a authoritarian takeover of the Glente Federation and canceling elections? A lack of cat ears. That's what it is. Players shared personal stories and candid reflections. And I could actually back up that position, but we're just going to walk past it. While developers listened, took notes, and commented on the continued improvement, it was a valuable moment in mutual learning and reflection. This panel was a significant step in the ongoing effort to build a stronger, more inclusive New Eden, where everyone feels seen, heard, and empowered. It encouraged us to keep focusing on asking players their opinions and insights, so that together we can create a kinder, more accessible environment for all. Conclusion. The Women in EVE survey highlighted what sets EVE Online apart: a thriving social ecosystem where friendship, teamwork, and collaboration are at the heart of the experience. It also reminded us that inclusion doesn't happen by default, but takes intention. And that's a good point. Like, we like to think, again, it goes back to that hiring thing. It's like, well, you shouldn't hire somebody just because they're a woman. You're right. You shouldn't. You should never hire somebody just because they are a demographic per se. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't hunt for people within that demographic that are qualified to bring them on to be inclusive. Because, you know, I have this theory that I like to call social entropy, right? Entropy, yes, scientifically, like this is a little bit of a misnomer when it comes to what entropy is in science, but like entropy is this idea that everything kind of breaks down over time, and social stuff is true. It has entropy too, right? If you're really close friends with someone, but then you never talk to them, never do anything nice for them, never call them up, then over time your friendship decays. Right? If you own an alliance and you never hold a meeting or talk to anybody or, you know, support of anything, you're not going to have an alliance for very long, right? Like things decay, and therefore require, like it's not enough to just default your way through things. These things require intentionality, right? There are biases in the universe and in the world and in our society that will push us in ways that are not necessarily great. And social entropy would suggest that without resistance to that, by default, they will trend towards decay. So only by intentionally deciding that we are going to have these higher standards and maintaining them and working on them, only that is how we actually build this better social structure. EVE Online has always been shaped by its player community, and understanding these trends is just the beginning. As the game evolves, so does its role as a platform or meaningful connection and collaboration. It's an opportunity to foster an even more inclusive culture in game and ensure that all players feel welcome and valued. By encouraging more diverse leadership, more inclusive hiring processes, amplifying the voices of underrepresented groups, and continuing to explore the social dynamics of EVE, we aim to build a stronger, more inclusive New Eden, where every player has the space to carve their own path and leave their mark on the universe. And that actually, I think, is the biggest takeaway from all of this, which is that, like, yes, it could be seen as like you don't, again, going back to that, what was said, like, hiring a woman just because they're a woman is bad, right? You want them to be hiring an unqualified person because they're a woman is bad. You'll want to find a qualified woman to hire, obviously. But the thing that makes this post important and these results important isn't just this conclusion, it's all the data behind it. This would not be good if it wasn't backed by the data, right? They identified ways in which things can be improved and are now actively attempting to improve it. That's the difference between, like, if you try to crack this and, like, strip it of its context and be like, oh, they're just trying to, you know, they're lowering the qualification of the standards or whatever by attempting to hire more. It's like, yeah, well, we've done the research and we've shown that there's a hole there, there's a problem there, and we can work on that, and we can see what the results of that are. Like, this is a data-driven conclusion and effort, right? And so it isn't just, let's give an advantage to women and non-binary. It's recognizing that there's a hole there and that we will all benefit. All of us will benefit by putting a little bit of extra energy in helping these groups that have been missed out in the past and helping them kind of catch up and have a place within the universe. I think that that's a valuable thing to think about, and I think that that idea extends outside of EVE all the way back to, like, Gamergate and other stuff like that. And so I think, again, like, I really, really appreciate the fact that CCP made this post, especially now with everything that's going on in our online communities and what is being seen as acceptable behavior of toxicity and masculinity and femininity and all these sorts of issues that we are dealing with as a society. And as an MMO, as I said, bleeding edge of sociology and psychology, EVE Online, as like it or not, has a place in that discussion. And I think that this is a really good position to have. I think that this is like a lot of really good work went into this post, and I think it's an interesting thing to keep in mind as we move forward and see how things improve. Okay. EVE Online has always been shaped by a player community, and understanding these trends is just the beginning. As the game evolves, so does its role as a platform for meaningful connection and collaboration. This is an opportunity to foster even more inclusive culture in the game and ensure that all players feel welcome and valued. By encouraging more diverse leadership, more inclusive hiring practices, amplifying the voices of underrepresented groups, and continuing to explore the social dynamics of EVE, we aim to build a stronger, more inclusive New Eden, where every player has a space to carve their own path and leave their mark on the future. And I think that my final point with this, though, is that to kind of get away from the gender side of things and more to just the EVE Online side of things, there is an argument that I have always heard as long as I've been playing EVE Online, and I've always hated it, which is that EVE Online is a niche game. Not everyone's going to like it, and that's okay. I don't agree with that notion. I actually strongly disagree with that notion. I think that EVE is a niche game, but it doesn't have to be. It's a universe. It's a universe with all different kinds of game styles. It's a universe where all different play styles are respected. It's a universe where if you just want to run a PI colony and have that be your thing, go for it. If you want to do missions, go for it. If you want to be a big pirate leader, go for it. If you want to be a politician, go for it. Like there's all these different environments that are mutually exclusive. Some of them are mutually exclusive, right? Like, and there's a place for all of them in this universe, to the point where, like, as I said before, impacting one thing almost doesn't even, I mean, like market-wise might impact other places, but like if they improve PI, that doesn't make things worse for faction warfare pilots, right? There's a place for both of those play styles in the game. And so I disagree. I strongly, strongly disagree with the idea that EVE is a niche game and should be a niche game. I think that the fact that, like, females can look at this game, women can look at this game and be like, there's nothing in this game for me, that's a failure of the game. There should be all kinds of different play styles in this game. Positive, negative, social, killer. There's room for it in this universe, in the same way that there's room for it in our real world and society, right? And so I challenge us to not consider EVE a niche game. I feel like that's giving it up, right? I think that the reason why the game is niche is because the things, the gameplays and the styles that could make EVE more popular are woefully underrepresented, woefully undersupported. And I think that Catalyst, more than anything else in the history of EVE, the Catalyst expansion proved that, because they did an entire expansion on mining and exploration, and it was fabulously popular, arguably more popular than even Uprising, which was crazy popular for how well it like revamped faction warfare and revitalized that gameplay and got people back into the game. That was fine, but that also still supported people that were already playing the game. The mining and industry update, or the mining and exploration update that came with Catalyst, got people who quit the game because the game didn't have anything for them, and convinced them that there's now more to it for them. And it's worth investing their time. It's worth investing their energy. It's worth investing themselves into this shared sci-fi universe of EVE Online. And that didn't come from revamping and fixing the most popular features of the game. It came from finding the parts of the game, the play styles in the game that exist in the game, and giving them the love and attention and care that they deserved, to make them more meaningful gameplay, not just for how it impacts the universe as a whole, but how it works for the player itself. And we can say things like mining crits are negligible in the big scheme of things, but you know what? Every single time I go and mine, someone's talking about their crits. Every time I went ice mining, there's a big deal about crits. Everything, like we talk about, like it has changed the way that we talk and think about that profession. And 10 years ago, people would have said that nobody gives a shit about mining and that CCP should not be focusing on mining and all these sorts of stuff, especially like back when they changed the Rogue Wall. And Catalyst showed that we need to ignore people when they tell people that EVE isn't something, and instead look at why EVE isn't that, and try to make EVE better at being that thing, whether that is PI colonies or mining or exploration or missions or anything, right? Like, EVE does not need to be a niche game. This idea that we should just give up on making it appeal to broader audiences, we have a long ways to go. EVE Online has a very negative reputation within the gaming industry, but our demographics have changed significantly in the last 10 years, and in my opinion, for the better. More active players, a lot of the, multi-boxers were replaced by active players. I'm not saying that multi-boxers aren't still a problem, but like, as I've said many, many times before, there's a reason why EVE Online is in the Museum of Art. I think there's a reason why I still make content for this game, in spite of the fact of like the setbacks that I've had. It's because I think that EVE Online is important. I think that EVE Online is important, like for our culture, for our community, for our society, for human race, because again, MMOs are the bleeding edge of psychology and sociology. So yeah, we're going through growing pains as a species, and I really think that EVE Online has a part to play in that. And so I think that if EVE is a niche game, that's unfortunate. we should work to make sure that that's not true anymore. That's, I guess, my closing thoughts about this. But let me know what you guys think. Did I say anything overly problematic today? Do you disagree with what I have to say? Please be polite in the comments. I'm probably going to split this off as an edited video because I think that this was a really good discussion. Bring back walking in stations. Unironically, like, even though walking in stations provided nothing to the game, removing it walking in stations was actually very detrimental to the game. We had an interview with Norin the other day, and he pointed out that his wife was one of the casualties. You remove walking in stations, they leave the game. It's yeah. It's a complicated issue, and I'm glad that CCP is taking it seriously. And I think that, again, like as I've said before, if we want to live in a sandbox, we got to be willing to build our own castles. I think that there is a certain amount of our responsibility as members of the community to help change the way that the world sees EVE Online and sees EVE Online players. And it's a journey, because Psychopaths Simulator, Spreadsheets in Space, we've got a long ways to go, but I think it's important. All right. Thanks. I've been Asherathi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about this 2012. Hold tight if you're watching this live, but if you're watching the edited version, thank you guys for checking this out. And until next time, I've been Asherathi, the voice of New Eden. Special thanks to my top tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, May, Malak, Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Mayak, Neelam, LM1, Sheesh, Susuro, Friends, and Rid. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for everybody who makes the choice to support my stream, even if it is just watching and sharing it with other people. If this is your first stream, please, or if this is your first video, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, of course, and coming onto our Discord to get informed, because you can join the Convocation of Empyreans if you want. We are hiring. But even if you just want to hang out, discuss EVE, and flag yourself as interested in YouTube videos, so that way you can see when I go live and post content, and consider becoming a member. They get edited videos early, and etc., etc. But all that said, I've been Asherathi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. Okay, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go. Shit, don't go. Okay. Sorry, that was to the record. That was for the recording. We're good. All right. Whew, 2 hours on that dev blog. So now that I've gotten rid of everybody who is here to see the distribution missions, by talking about demographics and sexism for 2 hours, should we even still do it? No, I'm just kidding. We're going to do it. Okay, so distribution missions. First of all, I want to talk a little bit. We've been doing missions this week, and that's been pretty good, I'd say. We did the Dominix and we did the Raven. This is actually a bustard, but yeah. So there are also 2 other kinds of missions. This is not what I want. In the agency, we can go agents and missions. We can see that there are distribution missions and mining missions. I have actually not spent a lot of time doing either of these. And of the 2, the more popular one is distribution agents. So we're going to actually give it a shot at doing distribution agents. I do distribution missions on, for the dailies. I can do 10 tunes at once. I have 30. That's actually a really cool point, right? Because like you're still going to get LP from these things, and there isn't like a combat situation. But okay, so why do distribution missions? Well, first of all, if you want, like, Space Trucker is a job in EVE. You can go into contracts. Where is it? Contracts, and go to courier contracts, and we can see that there are all kinds of people that are willing to pay you to move stuff from one place to another, right? The thing, though, is that a lot of these contracts, like, there's a lot of pitfalls in doing distribution contracts. There's a lot of ways to scam someone or trick somebody or get somebody put out or kill somebody by using distribution contract or like courier contracts. So most people that want to get into actual space hauling, either they do it as part of a larger arbitrage between stations. In other words, like buy stuff in one station, move it to another station to sell it. So they're the ones buying and moving the stuff for themselves. Or they join a larger organization, either a big block that has their own hauling systems, or one of the many, one of the several, I should say, hauling corporations, Red Frog, PushX, etc. And that creates a sort of a structure for their hauling to do to be more effective. Now, but if you want to get into hauling, you can also do these missions. But why do you want to do the missions? Well, there's a piece to all of this that I haven't really talked about in the last couple of days. I've alluded to it, but there's a big piece, which is that it's called standings, right? You can have faction standings, and you can have corporation standings, and you can have agent standings, right? So every single time you do a mission for an agent, you gain standings with that agent and with that agent's corporation. You do not gain standings with that agent's faction. Faction standings are extremely hard to gain, but relatively easy to lose, which is part of the problem. So, and the kicker here is that when you talk to an agent, it's going to use your best standings out of the three, unless you have, if you have -2 faction standings, then you get locked out of that Empire's missions, except for level 1, period. But as long as that isn't true, right? If I can have like a 1.0 standings with the Amar, and then a 2.0 standings with Cartham Corporation, but a 5.0 standing with a specific agent, and I'll still be able to use that agent. Likewise, if I have 5.0 with an Empire, like for instance, this Mimitar Republic of 6.95, what this means is I can actually do, I have the equivalent of having almost 7.0 standings with every single agent and every single corporation in the Mimitar, right? And so we can see here that it requires 1.0 standings in order to unlock level 2 agents. It requires 3.0 standings to do level 3 agents, and 5.0 to do level 4 agents, and of course 7.0 to do level 5 agents. And this can be, again, corporation, individual, or faction. This is why, like, if I'm trying to unlock, you know, we do missions for the SOE, right? Like that one agent that we were doing missions for the last couple of days, right? If someone wanted to start doing level 4 agents or level 4 missions, I can bring them alongside me, or like they can be part of the fleet, and I can share the rewards, and so they'll gain standings. And while it's a little bit slower to gain standings for corporation, they'll gain standings with that agent relatively quickly, to the point where they can start pulling the missions themselves, right? So we want to get standings so we can get to the better levels of missions. Or for whatever reason, there's other reasons to want standings too. The other big reason to want standings is taxes, right? If I'm going to be selling something on a market, like this market, this is the Dodixie market, is run by the Federation Navy. So if I want to sell something, like if I grab just a random thing that I have that isn't fit, if I want to sell this endurance, you'll see that there's a broker's fee and there's a sales tax. And let's see. Standings affects one of these two. Now I can't remember. Wait, I think it says it in here. Hold on. If I go to Federation Navy, I can see that my reprocessing tax is reduced and my market broker's fee is reduced, right? So this 1.14% is partially that low because of my extremely high standings with the Federation Navy. And this can be a big deal, especially if you're going to be doing market stuff or really anything, because like if you're able to sell it with less fees, then you can sell it for a little bit less than other people that have higher fees and still, you know, you can 0.01 ISK somebody or whatever, or you just make more money with it, or you can put up an order, you know, that you don't necessarily know is going to be filled, whatever. It cuts down on just loss of money as part of the process of working with market. So there's several reasons to want to gain standings with a group, especially, again, faction. Faction is extremely hard to get, but it is extremely powerful to have. Being able to do any agent in Minmatar and Gallente, very, very, very strong. Very fun. Love it. Just a very convenient thing to have be true about your account. But it takes a lot of work. Now, I actually have this high standings mostly because of faction warfare. Faction warfare is a really good way of getting faction standings, even though it can damage your other faction standings. But if you do it right, it can be good. But the other major way of getting faction standings is by doing what's called storyline agents. Now, the last time we were here, nope, 2 times ago, when we were doing it with the Dominics, you notice I got a special mission, and we ran out to Lowsec in order to deliver that stuff. That was a storyline mission. So if we can go to the, we can see here that this big boost. Nope, that's derived. Hold on, that was. Who did I do that storyline mission for? Hold tight. Maybe? Oh yeah, it's Alpha. That's right, it was SOE. I forgot. How did I forget it was SOE? All right, either way. So if we go up to here, we can see Servant Sisters of Eve. I got this mission, and it was 0.346 standings. So it took me from 7.78 to 8.13. Now, if you were lower, this actually would have been a bigger, as you go higher, you get less per thing. So this actually would have been a pretty good boost no matter where you were at. So these storyline missions are like the way to get faction standings, or fix your faction standings if they're broken. But the problem is that storyline missions only happen when you succeed. Any agents isn't true. R&D agents have special standings requirements. Can I really not pull a mission from a R&D agent? I can't do R&D with them, right? Let's go with, oh wait, no, we can just go with mission agents, R&D agents, any distance. Duval Laboratories, what's my Duval Laboratories standing? I need it sorted by name. Okay, great. Bad? Wait. How do I have no standings with... Either way, we're going to look into this. So this guy... You're right. You're right. He won't talk to me. I didn't realize that. So how do I get him to talk to me then? See, this is what I learn. How do I get him to talk to him? All right. Oh, I need to have... Okay, I got you. So you have to have the special R&D agent requirements too? So I need to have Starship Engineering 4, Higher Energy Physics 4, Mechanical Engineering 4, etc., etc. Oh, I need corp standings. Wait. Your effective personal standings must be 3.0 or higher towards this agent's corporation in order to use this agent. Okay. So there are a... Okay, great. And I do have 2.0 with Duval Laboratories, but I'm pretty sure that's just skills, right? My skills are improving my neutral standings. Because I think I accidentally picked like a group that I've literally never done anything for. That's good. That was a good pick. So that's good. You can't do R&D agents without special stuff. That's a whole other topic we're not going to worry about for now. But we're going to go back to faction standings. So the way to get faction standings, which are usually like the most powerful standings to get in the game, is by doing storyline agents. But storyline missions only show up when you complete 16 jobs for a corporation, for a specific corporation. At a specific tier? Does it require it to be a specific tier? Let me look real quick. This is just a list of them. Does it? Somebody can help me. Somebody answer the question. Does it? It's every 16. But is it with a particular corporation or is it with a particular faction? Or was it with this particular agent? Distribution missions are fast to complete, and thus you can quickly finish 16 missions to gain a storyline mission. This is especially true if you have multiple agents close together, ideally one system or even station. Storyline missions are especially wanted for faction standings, so distribution missions are a good way to increase those if you... Okay, that's cool and all. Same level and faction, but not necessarily the same corporation. Just looked it up. I'm on Eve Uni. I have a link to the distribution mission section there. So yes, I have to do 16 missions of the same level and faction. When did they change it from 10? I believe it's always been 16. There is a thing about 10, but I don't remember what that one is. Nope, I don't know. I didn't realize that was hard math. I thought it was more random than that. Good to know. Yeah, no, it's 16. So, okay. So the point here is I can do 16 missions for, like, if I was to do combat missions, I would have to do each one of these missions back to back to back to back, right? I can only do one of them at a time. You can only be in one site shooting at rats at any given time with any given character, right? But with distribution, it's a little bit different. It gives distribution storyline. No, it just gives storyline. There's only storyline missions, right? So I can do multiple distribution missions at the same time in order... Am I here? Can you guys hear me? Am I good? Sorry, my thing just popped up that said my bitrate is not working right. So I just wanted confirmation that everything's fine, and then we'll keep going. I don't know why YouTube's so weird. All right, so we are going to try that. Okay, great. You can hear me. All right, we're going to try this and see how things work. Great. So I want to run as many distribution missions as I can at the same time. So we're going to go, and now I am kind of cheating a little bit. You know, I'm not exactly the way a new player would start because I not only have the standings to do higher level missions, but also I am using a Bustard, which is probably one of the best ships to use for distribution missions. Hold on, let me go look up pull this up real quick. So in this distribution mission section of the EVE Universe Wiki, we can see that level 1 and 2 missions have a cargo capacity of 600 M3. So the transportation Synesis is great. It can do 2 or even 3 potentially missions at the same time. Level 3 and level 4 is 4,200 M3 and level 3 is 8,000 M3. For level 4s. So you need to be able to have at least 8,000 M3. Technically speaking, you can do this with a T1 hauler, but you'll probably only get one done at a time. Should have forced you to do level 1s in a Synesis. We could try it. However, I'm going to go with the... blockade runners are arguably the best distributions for missions all around. They can carry more than 8 M3. They align time, they warp fast. So some of these are going to be potentially into dangerous areas. So we'll just have to see how things work. Yeah. Again, I've never actually done this myself. I've recommended it to people, so here we go. I actually, so here we go. We got mission agents, distribution missions, Viator or Occator for level 4s. It kind of almost doesn't matter, right? Hold on. Well, sorry. I'm wrong about that. So with transportation ships, we have the base Tech 1 transportation ships, which each race has a decent one. And then we have the Viator and Occator for Tech 2, so that's what you're talking about. Each race has their own version of this, where there's one of them that is cloaky. This one allows a covert ops cloaking device. And there's one of them that has a huge extra bay, especially when trained, okay? So I'm actually wanting to go with that extra bay, just so I can do more missions at the same time. Although Eve Uni was suggesting doing the CovOps one, because that way you can get around fast and doesn't matter where the hauling tells you to go, you can still get there. The one problem, the one thing to keep in mind when it comes to, in particular, these transportation ships, the what's it called? What is this? Blockade runner. The thing about the blockade runners, which are the cloaky transportation ships, is they are scan immune. So it does not matter what you are carrying. Assume you are a high profile target no matter what. Okay? Like, yes, you can covert ops cloak. Yes, you can align and warp very fast. Very cool. If there is a tornado anywhere in your path and they see you, they will take a pot shot at you. Like, if you warp to Jita and you don't use a zero dock, you will lose your cloaky ship on a long enough timeline. Somebody will pop you before you can even finish your docking if you don't use a zero dock bookmark, because everybody's going to just assume that this thing has like 3 trillion in its cargo hold and shoot at you anyways, because they can't know for sure, right? And the only reason why somebody would use this is if they have something expensive in it, so they're just going to take the shot. I've never had a problem. Probably let's just say I'm telling you this from experience. Whereas this one, the one that has the larger cargo bay, is actually extremely tanky and has a built-in warp core stability. So it can get 2 warp disruptors or 1 warp scram and still warp off, even without a warp core stabilizer. With a warp core stabilizer, you require 2 scrams, I think, or at least like a faction or like it needs to be both faction and bonus. So like a Maulus Navy issue might still be able to hit that. Because that would be 5 points of warp core stability. So things could theoretically catch you, but very little without having multiple of them. And you can still do the cloaky micro warp drive trick with it. So I'm going to go with the deep space transport. The ship I used the other day with the torrent was the deep space transport. So it'd be 5 disruptors. It'd be 5 warp disruptors. Or 2 scrams and a warp disruptor, because you need to hit 5 points of warp core stability, or 5 points to bring it down, because you've got 1 by default, plus 2 is 5. Either way, now the nice thing about the deep space transport, or the deep space blockade runner. God, I never remember the difference between the two. Deep space transport. The thing about deep space transports is it's not just their main cargo hold. They have their main cargo hold, but then they also have this fleet hangar. And this fleet hangar gets expanded per skills. So at max skills, you have 6,200 M3. This is the largest M3 that you're going to get without like a freighter. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. I think it'd be cheating to go with level 3 missions. So we're going to just see, or sorry, level 4 missions. So we're going to start with level 1 missions, maybe? We'll see. Let's see. So let's pick a specific faction. We're in Gallente space, so we're going to do Gallente. You know what? Well, let's see. Can we find... Let's see one that I don't have high standings with. Alestra? Is there... And what we're looking for is a bunch of agents that are roughly the same number of jumps away. because hopefully they're close to each other, right? In fact, actually, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Can't I do this? Can I do this? Does this work? Hold on. Corporation? Does that work? No, that's not. Services? Nope. This would be so cool if I could look it up on here. Can I? I don't know. I'm just checking. I don't think so. What is a DD agent site report? What does that mean? Deathless Wraith Traders, 1 jump? Okay. Deserted Galente output? What? Is this just a way to find cool places out there? This is so cool. Wait a minute. Oh my god. I didn't even know this was a thing. This is... Okay. So like any system that has like cool sites in them, you can just check it out from here. I love it. Well, okay. Let's not get too distracted. Security offices? What does a security office do? Location of security offices where you turn in items and ISK to your security status. Oh, okay. So that's like dog tags. Militia offices, manufacturing facilities. I don't think I have one. They have it here. Dang it, that'd be so cool. That's faction warfare. I want a thing where I can look up how many agents are in any given system. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a thing. Nope. I doubt it. All right, cool. We tried. So instead, we're going to try to find something that is a decent target. Then you add a container in it and get like, what, 80 plus M3? Oh yeah, you can technically do like magic cargo with it, I'm pretty sure. And get a little bit of extra room. That's true. We're going to do... We definitely want only high sec. And let's say within 10 jumps, let's just see what we have. There's Alestra, Bank of Luminaire, Cameltech. We do like Cameltech. 4, 4, 6, 6. Okay, so Mize. Look at this. Look at all of those agents all in Mize. That's our target right now. So let's go. Again, I've recommended doing distribution missions before. I know people who have done it successfully. I've never done it. So if I'm making mistakes, we'll see. But Cameltech is one of the Upwell corporations. So getting LP for Cameltech sounds like a great idea anyways. In fact, while we're on our way, why don't we go to Fuzzworks and look up Cameltech. We have normal stuff, normal stuff. I wonder if they have the special stuff in here. We can go 100 entries. Let's go to the top. Control home. Okay, great. So, mining connections, skill book. I wonder if this has been updated with the new Galente Alpha Nexus chips. That would have been useful a while ago. Not so much anymore. So nothing truly remarkable standing out in the positive ISK section with a high 5% volume. And this is why we do SOE agents, because SOE LP is worth so much and so easy to liquidate. But there are some options at about the 1,000 ISK per LP measure. Can't you get Upwell consortium issue ship BPCs from Upwell Corps? Yes, that is what I was looking for sure. So we're going to check it when we get there. You can get an Upwell Palatine Keepstar. Okay. Yeah, that's not what I'm doing. We'll see when we get there. Because it doesn't look like it's actually on Fuzzworks yet. So this ship has an alignment time of 18 seconds. So using my micro warp drive to warp is a really good idea. So I'm going to right click on it, make sure set auto repeat off. So now every time I hit warp, I can just hit F2 to cycle my micro warp drive, and I'll warp in 10 seconds instead of 18. It's also worth noting, so like with this fit, which I'll show you guys, as you can see, this fit has, well, if I simulate it, 125,000 EHP, right? And a very strong resistance profile. Now, I used to have a fit that had more active hardeners, where you can trade in tags. You trade in tags at Concord stations and DED stations for standings, unless you're like responding to me looking at the map like 10 minutes ago. So at any rate, yes, yeah, as we showed yesterday or whatever, with the correct afterburner, you can do it with an afterburner too, or as well. Oh yeah, no problem. But I actually have gotten one of my bustards popped just running around a high sec before. And the issue is that the people that are ganking you are going to be using things like tornadoes that have sensor boosters, right? So when my buster died, it died so fast that I did not have time to turn on the hardeners. So while I had a bunch of hardeners, none of the hardeners meant anything because I wasn't even able to get them on. So that's why I've switched to more of a passive hardening, especially for EM, because those NATOs that want to gank you, like if they know that you're a shield ship, they're going to target for EM because then they can cut straight through your shields, no problem. So I want it pre-set up to tank EM, and then when I can turn on my hardener, then everything else is better. But like a whole bunch of this EHP, I still have 94,000 EHP without anything running. And that's really important. Like, I know that we talk about hardeners being great, especially for mission ships, but when it comes to your hauling ship, when something shoots at you, it's going to probably be so fast you might not be able to get your hardener on. So there's a certain thing to be said about not even using active hardeners, but only using passive hardeners on your hauling ships. Also, remember that a lot of hauling ships put a lot of fitting, or a lot of their defense, especially freighters and orcas and stuff, put a lot of their tank in the hull. So having a good damage control can be really good. Like I have, and ironically enough, an abyssal damage controls can be somewhat easy to get. But remember, abyssal damage controls only support hull resistance. So this is probably actually not the best setup for this. It would be better to like fully hull tank this ship and then use that abyssal damage control. But, you know, I have my own kind of excessive nature. I use passive hardeners on my Viator for sure, at least for them EM resist. Exactly, yeah. It's funny because like Fonsui and I both lost our deep space transports on the same day. His was, I think, a Galente one, and mine was a Caldari one. And we both, without talking to each other, built our own like update to the fit. And then when we like talked to each other, we had both basically done the exact same thing in order to fix the fit. So I kind of like it now because, like I said, it's all about this EHP preferred passive hardeners, but like for sure. And like a lot of that comes from these extenders and stuff too. You just want to be the hardest target you possibly can because of what I like to think of like the what is it, the Billy Goat's Gruff methodology of hauling. I don't have to be necessarily tanky enough to survive the biggest gank. I just need to be a harder target than other people, and therefore they become the target, not me. Because gankers can only gank one person at a time. So my goal is to not to prevent ganking, because that's not a thing that can happen. My goal is to make sure that if they do gank somebody, it's someone else. If they try to gank me and they fail, that's even funnier, though. Obviously. All right, so we're in Mise now. We're en route to the station. And tonight, probably, tonight I will be doing the my first major stream on Ashrathi Decanted. Malak, shit, I just realized. Can you DM me my own channel? That way I can link it. Oh no! All right, hold on. Do I even want to engage with this? Hold on, let me check this real quick. There has been a post in response to the inclusive New Eden. See, this is exactly what I was talking about. Hold it. This is exactly what I was talking about at the very end. You are delusional if you think this game can appeal to anything but men, and the few women around and non-males. Okay, I'm not going to get into that point. And have the preferences of males, blah, blah, blah. For example, they love TCGs and board games, are only here because they got introduced to the game by a man. Like, this position is defeatism, right? This is... Oh, EVE Online can't possibly be, like, appeal to women. And shouldn't appeal to women. That, or take women and put any demographic of, like, this is where I come back to that, like, niche. EVE Online is a niche game, and that's good, actually. No, it isn't. It just means that there are pieces of the game that could be better. My first girlfriend introduced me to EVE. Yeah, no shit. Like, this argument is that exact argument that I was talking about towards the end. Which is that, like, we need to get past this idea that EVE can't be better than it is. And I'm not going to dig into this too deep. I'm just going to show this off as an example of what I was talking about. It's not just rage bait, though. I've been playing this game long enough to know that this is a legitimately held opinion. Okay. First of all, we're at Chemeltech now, so we're going to go look at the loyalty point store. And see, we should be able to get the new consortium stuff, right? That's a good argument for where advertising money should be spent. I mean, we need cat ears on ships. That'll bring more diverse crowds. Hell yeah. I love that he threatens to quit the game. People be like, goodbye. Hey, man, can I have your stuff? Oh, hey, hell yeah. You were able to link it. So there's a link in chat right now. Tonight, I believe, probably should be. I have tested it already. I'm going to be streaming Star Wars The Old Republic very soon on that channel. So if people could go to that channel that Malak just linked and subscribe, so that way you can see it, or be on the Discord because I'll post it there, it would mean so much to me. Anybody who's willing to at least just show up and check it out, because like trying to make non-Eve content, I'm trying to honor everybody and make sure that this channel remains for Eve content. And I know that there's a lot of people that only like Eve content, but I also want to be able to possibly do other content besides just Eve. And so I made that decanted channel, and it's always been, like, I've been meaning to do more stuff with it. So it means so much to me if people were able to back me up on that too. And we'll have an opportunity to talk about more, especially like today's discussion has been, in my opinion, hopefully a good example of the fact that I can discuss things besides just Eve in a kind of a compelling way. Hopefully, if you agree, then go for it. If not, then whatever. And tonight we'll be doing SWTOR, either tonight or tomorrow, but probably tonight. So make sure to sub to that. No, that's fine, Morcar. You can just put it on in the background and let it roll. Either way. Okay, let's keep on going here. Can we get? So far, I'm not seeing. Oh, here it is. Consortium issue blueprint. 30,000 LP, which is a lot of LP for a non-faction warfare corp, or corporation. Plus 30 million ISK or a pioneer. That's so much. Good golly. Am I Rebel Scum or Chad Smith? 100% Sith. My two characters right now are Sith, and tonight when I do it, it's going to be so. Again, on the subject of things I haven't done yet, I've never actually played through the Imperial Agent campaign, so we'll be starting a brand new campaign with the Imperial Agent because I've heard nothing but good things about the Imperial Agent story. So, yeah, that's the plan. So yes, Cameltech does have LP, or has the consortium issue for both the Venture and the Pioneer, so it's going to be a good group to do stuff with. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. We can see here, Agent is so good and diverse. Exactly, yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it. I think it'll be a good opportunity. If you haven't done SWTOR, you can come check it out with me. If you have done SWTOR, you can watch me figure. I have a lot of experience like World of Warcraft and stuff, so, whatever. But I'm also probably going to be playing a new class. I've only ever played Force users so far. So I'll probably be playing, I think you have to play a tech user to do Imperial Agent. So I don't even know what class I'm going to do. So, if you want to help participate in that, we're going to be starting it from scratch in a couple of hours. Sorcerer's great. My current characters are Sorcerer and Marauder. Well, my current character is a Sorcerer and Marauder, although I did kind of go light side, so she's actually a Sage and Shadow, but yeah. Or not Marauder, Assassin? Whatever. Either way, she's a Sage and a Marauder, or a Sage and a Shadow now. Although she does work for the Sith shell. She's the Wrath. The Wrath of the Emperor. Either way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to accept all 5 of these missions and see about setting it up. So we're going to just accept the Sith Warrior gameplay. The Sith Warrior story was impressive. It really let me feel the experience of being like Darth Maul on a good day. Going around and be like, hi, I'm the badass here to fix everything. So we're just going to accept all these missions. We're starting with level 2. Oh, no, I can't complete it yet. Just because I want to have the cargo and to kind of give people an experience of what it would be like. So, by the way, let's also look at this real quick. Is it worth gaining standings with Cameltech in the first place? That's a good question. So we're going to go, let's say if I wanted to eventually do security missions with the Cameltech. How would I check to make sure it's smart? So I go here. Again, I want to be able to do Cameltech because I want to be able to get the LP for the stuff, so that's fine. we can see here, there's a level 4 agent there. So yeah, there are, in fact, if I go with only in high sec, only level 4 agents. Okay, well, there's one Chemeltech combat agent. Okay, cool. Well, in high sec, any security, we get multiple in low sec. I don't know if that's necessarily the smartest thing to do. I did Chemeltech ages ago so I could get the best Galente engineering R&D agent. Yeah, so that's another reason to go with Chemeltech, is good R&D agents, which for those of you who don't know, R&D agents are actually kind of a form of passive income. Once you've hit their requirements, they build up stuff over time, and you can use them to get data cores. I know a lot of people who have left the game for several years, came back to the game after several years, and they've built up just an unbelievable amount of research points, and then they just they cash it all out into data cores and then sell that on the market, and that becomes their seed ISK for their return to the game. That it actually does work pretty good. Okay, so I have these 5 missions accepted. So if we go into the inventory, we can see in here there's the different stuff. So I can go here and put it in my fleet hangar. It all fits. Great, cool, awesome. And now I have these 5 tasks over here. So we can go. Hold on. This one wants me to go to this system. So I'm going to hit. Now I'm going to go through all of the different missions I have, and I'm going to go and add them all to my waypoints. Right. So I go here, add this to my waypoint. I don't need to worry about it too much. I'm just going to add things to the waypoint right now. I don't need to worry about the order of it yet. Add waypoint. Add waypoint. Now, you don't want to do this with more than 10 systems, as we talked about like a while ago. But with 5 systems, this is going to be fine. So add waypoint. So here's my 5 different locations. And this is actually kind of a tight thing. I can do all of these agents in 19 jumps. I apparently have 6 R&D agents that each have about 145,000 RP in graviton physics. I mean, like I said, that's a good way to suddenly discover you have a lot more money than you thought you did. But I might be able to get this better. So I've now set all of the different stations that I need to go to on my autopilot as waypoints. And then I go to the A here on the autopilot, and I go to optimize route. And it reroutes it, and so I actually eliminated 4 jumps from my overall transportation. You can optimize the route, and it'll figure out how to route to all the different waypoints that you have in as few jumps as possible. So here we go. I've got that set up now. Let's go. Missing cargo warning. What? It must say that because it's not in my cargo hold. Yeah, it's all in my fleet hangar. That's unfortunate. This error used to not show up. I remember when people were so mad when they added this error in, because like leaving something behind is like a rite of passage in Eve, kind of. But I don't like that it doesn't realize that you've got more than one cargo hold. And so we just go. Now, if you notice, the first time I undock and warp, I don't use the micro warp drive trick. And that's because the micro warp drive trick only works if you're starting from 0 velocity, right? If you actually have to change your trajectory because you're already going in a direction, it can actually be worse to try to use the micro warp drive. So especially when undocking, I tend to not use the micro warp drive trick, at least for a second or two before I warp. But then after that, with all your jumps, it works. Man, my official YouTube studio chat hasn't updated. The last message was about how they use a passive hardener for their Viator. Like, why is that not updating? YouTube streaming is always so challenging. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. All right. IA is greater than Dark Sork, which is greater than Light Sork, which is greater than Light Mara. I mean, like I said, I'm very looking forward to the Imperial Agent storyline. I've only read good things about it. Did you check if any of your cargo counts as smuggling? It gives you a different warning if that's true. No legality. So the way to tell is if you do a show info, there'll be a legality tab if it's contraband, which none of this is contraband. Crates of raggy dolls, groups of exotic dancers, group of refugees. Oh, and now the chat caught up. Now that I've said something, it's like, oh. So we've got 2 jumps to our first drop off. Just out of curiosity, okay, I do actually have avoid eating comm systems on. So that's good. I don't have any eating comm systems within my route, which is kind of one of the advantages of staying in Yantey / Caldari space for this, because they didn't win a whole bunch of, well, I mean, Yantey, I guess, kind of did. I don't know. It's easier. Amarr and Minmatar definitely won a lot more. Amarr won a lot of their invasions. They were just, Amarr was, the Amarr race, not just the players, but the actual Amarian rats were just better at fighting the Triglavians. Caldari were just worse. So a lot of the Caldari site systems went to the Triglavians. A lot of, yeah, Caldari definitely lost the most. The Caldari rats were so bad at fighting the Triglavians, especially at first, that it was legitimately hard for the Edencom forces to fight back. Amarr, I think, did the best, even though like the very first loss was Amarr. Rarvos was an Amarr system. But 0% EM resistance and focus firing your jams did not help Amarr, or did not help Caldari rats at all. And a lot of the people who joined the Edencom side, especially for like RP purposes, were mostly like, a lot of them were Minmatar loyalists, people, Arcia Elkin and others. And what's actually interesting is that, especially in Minmatar space, they did something interesting, which was like, they didn't try to win. So if nobody won any given invasion, after a certain number of days, the invasion would just end. And so a lot of the pro-Minmatar people actually made sure that neither side won their game. How do I know which one I'm in? Darn it. Do I have to open them all up to see which one of them is in Takamiya? I guess so. Do I have to put it in the item hanger? Oh, okay. So yeah. When I put it in the item hanger, the correct one glowed. So that's a good one. And let's see what I got from that. I got a pittance of ISK. And good thing I don't think I have any LP with them so far, so we can just look here. $48 LP. I didn't even get enough for the daily out of one mission. But again, I'm doing level 2 missions. You don't do level 2 missions to make fabulous amounts of wealth. You do level 2 missions to unlock level 3 missions and level 4 missions, right? So that's fine. And remember, like, this is 5 different missions that I'm all doing them all at the same time. So I am jumping like 15 jumps total. And then, of course, I have to go back to Mize in order to finish. In fact, we can do that. We can go to this task and say add waypoint. So now when I'm done with the route, it takes me back to Mize again to get more missions. And so with this like 20 jump route, I complete 5 missions. If I do this 3 times and then 1 more, then I trigger a storyline mission, which, like, that's still, if your goal is to get storyline missions, this is so much faster than attempting to run 16 combat missions, right? I used level 1 angel missions to grind out the rep to do the arc. Yep. Yeah, exactly. This is also really good for, you know, factions that are a little bit harder to get reputation for, like pirate factions. They usually have distribution agents too. And remember, if you get -2 faction, then you can't do any missions for above level 1. So you can just like grind a whole bunch of level 1 distribution missions in order to try to help fix your faction standings. So that way you can do other stuff. Now, remember, if you do that, you're also going to be like hostile to some of the places potentially. So plan your strategy accordingly. But this is one of those reasons why they say like fixing faction standings is one of the most painful things in the entire game. Because like, can you imagine doing this because you have to, because you want to get your faction standings up? Like, this is a cool way to quickly do it if you decide to, but like, if you're locked out of space and you have to grind faction standings in order to get up, oh, that can be painful. Honestly, standings is the worst part of Eve. I think, so like, it's one of those things, kind of like attributes, where I feel like its current state is probably pretty bad. But again, it's one of those things that we just talked about, where it's like, it's bad because it's neglected, not because it doesn't have a place in the game. I would much rather a game in which standings was meaningful and also said something about those groups than removing them completely, right? Like I've said before, I want the pirate factions to be like show off more about the pirate factions by their standings. So like, for instance, maybe if you have standings, you know, you have to have like 6.0 standings with Serpentis to be able, not Serpentis, but Sancha to be able to dock in their stations because they're highly xenophobic. But like, Serpentis Prime is basically Tortuga, so as long as you don't have like -8 with Serpentis, you can still dock there. Or like if you have +6 or more or something like that with the Garistas, then maybe you can gain access to their pirate Stargate network. So every single day, almost like wormholes, there's like a bunch of random connections via pirate Stargate connections that you can utilize because you're friendly with the pirates that you wouldn't be able to utilize otherwise. You know, there's a lot of little ways that you can make standings kind of interesting and different for each empire or faction, and let them kind of show off what makes those empires' feelings about things. So I would much rather see something like that than just remove them completely. I feel like that is giving up on it. Because again, so the thing is that you may not like faction grinding, but ultimately, this is one of those things that like achievers like it. So there are players that want to do that. There are players there. I know I have friends that are proud of the fact that they have positive standings, positive like 5.0 or whatever, with all 4 empires, or with faction warfare, right? They have the highest rank possible in multiple empires. That's a lot of work. And you only really do that if you like have a motivation to have achieved that. So, yeah. I'd rather standings determine payout ability rather than payout than ability to perform the mission or use the structure at all. Nobody likes it when they are only proud because of nobody likes it. They are only proud because very few people can. I disagree. I disagree. Only because you say nobody, and so it's easy to be like, I don't know about nobody. Anytime anybody says nobody or everybody, it's like, nah. So if I drop all of the items into the item hanger, we can see that this one lights up. So I can tell that this is the one that I can turn in. And then I just grab everything and put it back into my fleet hanger and then keep going, right? Hey, I did get, I finally got my LP. So I got my reward. Imagine if you needed positive rep to use those smuggling gates, like you said, it would make Null way more interesting. Yeah. And well, like, and Pochfin, this is one of the reasons why I really liked Pochfin, because it does play around with the idea of standings. Now they've kind of undermined that a little bit, but I do really like it. And I think that, so one of the things I want is like, if you gain 8.0 standings with a corporation, using the facilities in those corporation stations should have the same bonuses as using a player station. And this, or structure, and this is something that is very controversial about my position, because obviously you want to have some sort of advantage for a player-built structure. But as a person who has tried to do faction warfare, or, you know, did faction warfare for a long time, and as a person who did engage with the Triglavian collective quite a bit, like, there are people, like, there are people that want to commit to participating as part of a faction. And the fact that you, in order to live out of an NPC station, you actually have to give up certain advantages, I think it's kind of lame. I think that asking people to do the work, if you work for a corporation enough to grind your standings up that high, that should be an alternative way. Yes, EVE is a social game. Yes, they should be part of a player group. Blah 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 blah. But also, EVE is for a lot of different people. So if instead of wanting to be part of a player corp in order to be able to do that, if you really want to just be your lone wolf self and work for one of the NPCs instead of one of the players, you shouldn't have to feel like you're giving up too much for doing that at its endpoint. Yeah, the advantage is clear. You could just skip the rep grind. And so, like, the biggest problem with Pochfin wasn't the fact that structures existed, because, like, structures existing made it so that the restrictions on NPC stations were kind of undermined, right? Like, if you can only do industry in Pochfin when you have +4 standings, that's kind of interesting. But if anybody can do it from a player structure, then that just completely undermines the value of that. So I think that, you know, a lot of pro-Triglavian people want to just work for the Triglavian. They don't want to maintain player structures. Pochfin isn't for player structures. They want to burn player structures. They want to be part of the Triglavian collective. And so they should feel like they have every, you know, once they've worked hard enough as an individual to, like, you know, glorification to the fit and all that, they should be able to hit the same kinds of advantages that a player group can, I would say. Imagine it took you 2 years of grinding to be able to do the content that you thought might be interesting, only to find it you locked out of other content for 4 years. Yeah, I mean, obviously, so that kind of stuff can be more painful. Always lemons. This isn't even how Triglav. What I'm saying is that not only could you theoretically lock out the ability to use industry facilities if you have low standings with that corporation, but what I'm saying is that if you have really, really, really high standings with that corporation, then you actually get, like, the better industry rates, the better reprocessing rates, the better whatever that you get out of player structures. But only if you've gone through all of the work to get your standings up. So that way there's an individual progress track and a group progress track that are both available. The point is that there's a solid chunk of the player base that want to not engage with player structures, but would rather participate with the NPC side of things. And I think that's worth taking seriously. Especially since people that are into the RP of things are probably going to be your most, like, diehard, loyal people in the end. Wait, can I just wait? Oh, shit. It just allowed me to request another mission with him. I wonder if I could actually do that. At any rate, let's keep going. I don't agree with locking content itself behind standings. Missions, I think, is okay, just because, like I said, other people can pull that for you to help you out. And you can still do missions. You're just working your way up through missions. So it's not like you, like, grind to get to level 4 and then suddenly realize that you don't like missions, right? Like, you should be able to figure out how much you like a certain activity and then continue to, like, commit further and further into it, right? I'd much rather interact with NPCs. You players are mostly boring. No, yeah, totally. I'm with you. The other thing about this, so like the other piece of this is that I've said this before. I want mission running to be kind of changed. You should be able to just open up your opportunities and see what missions are available within range of you. I shouldn't have to go and talk to each individual person. Like, I should just be able to open this up and be like, hey, what does somebody want me to do in this system? Right? And there might be player opportunities there, but there might be NPC opportunities there. And so you're like, oh, there's the score here. I'm going to run that. And then you accept it, and that allows it to be there for you, and then go and do it. Seventh Heaven. Hey, man, how's it going? Thank you so much for that at the end of the stream yesterday. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to respond to it then. Problem with missions and burners are very interesting, but you can only do them after grinding through level 4s and doing missions which are not burners. Well, again, like, have to isn't actually correct, because you could, you can always team up with someone, right? Like, for instance, I run missions, but I never run burner missions. So if you're interested in doing burner missions, you could actually just kind of hang out in my proximity, and then when I get a burner mission, you can do it, and we can split it, and then we can keep moving or whatever, right? Like, there's, and then more importantly, like, burner, like, it's not too difficult to get your standings up. I don't know. Burner missions are a little bit of a special snowflake. I can see your point, because they are locked behind level 4 missions. But that also means that alphas can't do it, period. Burner missions are kind of in a weird place because of how they were introduced and kind of never touched again. And, like, in spite of that, the fact that they've kind of become a whole play style in and of itself. Eve that locks me for flying a Titan on day 1. I've argued in the past that I really like the skill training system, or the fact that things do take time because you have to kind of, like, work your way to unlock things. But when they really... Yes, when they release opportunities and they talk about NPCs potentially also putting them for events and stuff, yes, they have talked about that. I'm just taking that a step further and saying that mission running should be, like, I shouldn't have to go and talk to the agent to get their mission. I should be able to just pull up the thing and see what people want me to do, and then go and decide to do it for them. I also think I've long since thought that, like, groups should seek you out. Like, if you do a bunch of mining activities, like if you complete your air career program in mining, then you actually start getting, like, Eve mails or whatever from mining agents asking you to come work for them. Like, as you do things like are revealed to you of more things to do within that activity bound. Love takes time, yeah. Well, and I've said this before, like, the thing I really like about attributes, actually, as an aspect of the game, is that because attributes can only be remapped once a year, they get people to think about Eve in terms of, like, a year at a time, which is a very alien concept, especially for a newer player, right? So a newer player is going to look through skills, they're going to run into attributes, they're going to ask questions about attributes, and attributes challenges you to start thinking about the game in a long-term basis and give up your moment-to-moment thinking about the game a little bit. And that's important because EVE Online is a game that takes place over the course of weeks, months, and years, not minutes, hours, and days. People already complain when they sent out emails, but during the Drifter crisis, people are going to complain about it for sure. But if you think about it, a complaint about it is a kind of interaction. So it isn't necessarily a matter of how many people complain about it. It's how many people are positively impacted by it. You know, if 10% of the population are actually improved by it, then it doesn't really matter that 20% of the population was annoyed enough about it to complain about it, per se. Because you can get used to it. But if it did get that other 10% engaged on a deeper level, then that's so valuable. And also, like, that's why I said, like, as you do the activities, things related to that activity kind of get communicated to you. So that way, like, a PvP or a person that joins faction warfare doesn't get told to go do mining now, right? It's like you start to make a name for yourself in certain fields. And so people start reaching out to you based on that. And on that note, no matter how great your charisma is, the gankers usually don't see that yet. It's true. Patience is a skill that no one talks about in EVE. It's vital. And that's the thing. Like, I think one of the reasons why I think that EVE is important is that the very skills that make you decent at EVE are actually not gamer skills by and large, but are actually real life skills, right? Time management, inventory management, logistical, planning ahead, risk management, emotional control, you know, like, ultimately, I've had times where I'll get a new ship, like the Odysseus, right? I'll get a new ship. It's very expensive. And so I'll get it. And then I'm too afraid to use it because of risk aversion. That's me. That's a personal thing. That's me, right? So if I am going to get over it, if I am going to use this ship, I have to work out that risk aversion. And you know, it's not enough to, like, obviously if I'm too brash about it, I am going to make a mistake and I am going to lose it. I'm going to be sad about it or whatever. But ultimately, you know, it goes back to that statement of, like, what is it? A ship in port is safe, but that is not what ships are for, you know? Yeah, you'll be safe if you're risk adverse, but EVE is about learning to balance that risk aversion, about risk management, and, you know, doing the thing that scares you in a very real way that is a real life thing, not a video game thing, in an interesting way. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about EVE more than anything else, is that the skills that make you good at EVE are often real life skills, not video game skills. You know, my ability to aim and twitch aim in, like, a first person shooter doesn't make me a better, like, person in, like, the world. But, like, understanding how people work, or how to run a group, or how to create a spreadsheet, or do logistical stuff, or scout, or, you know, whatever. Like, these are all skills that actually are real life skills. EVE is about getting a station spin counter as high as possible. Oh, yeah, shit, I forgot. Okay, well then, ignore everything I've said. If the aim of the captain were to preserve his ship, he would keep it in the port forever. Exactly, but that's not good. I'm not undocking my Babaraga unless the Corp fleet. Yeah, man, I have actually, on several occasions in the last couple of days, talked about bringing out my Babaraga for this war deck. Probably not going to in the event that they're listening. But boy, do I want to. But again, like, yeah, if I have this powerful tool, the Babaraga, but I've never flown it. I got to get over that at some point, right? 2 days ago, if I had allowed the fact that there was a war deck to scare me, I wouldn't have done the stream, or at least I wouldn't have done it with the Dominic's Navy issue. Now, I have the advantage of being a streamer, so I understand that bad things are also content. So that's my trick, right? Like, if I wasn't streaming, I would not have flown the Dominic's Navy issue that day. It's because of the war deck, right? It just wouldn't be safe. It's dumb. It's a bad idea. But EVE Online is a game about the practical application of bad ideas, right? So by doing it on stream, I negated some of that fear, because now even if a bad result happens, that's still content. If something bad is going to happen to me, I want it to happen on stream. So by doing it on stream, it made it more okay to do the spooky thing, right? The bad idea. It is a bad idea to do mission running during a war deck. But I wasn't punished for it, and it made things a little bit more interesting. So practical application of bad ideas. It is a bad idea to do mission running during a war deck. But in order to get the most out of EVE, you gotta know when to do the bad idea. Or at least, do the bad idea and see what happens and have fun with it either way. You have a war headquarters station that your Babaraga can shoot out? Yes, and it's reinforced right now. I'm not going to say I'm not bringing the Babaraga to the final timer on that, but like, I guess I'll say I've been mostly talked out of it. And what's funny is that there's also, because this is a social game, there's a whole side of it, right? Because, like, if I do something too dumb, right? If I do bring a Babaraga into a war deck and then lose it because I'm an idiot, that's only going to invite more trouble, right? So there is something to consider. And with lore too, doing the bad idea can have repercussions. That's true. Like, there are optimal paths in EVE. There is the correct thing to do a lot of the time. But to get the actual, like, to edge out, to get past the norm, you gotta learn when to break the rules, not just when to follow the rules. It's like art, You learn the rules to know when to break them. The inviting trouble. It's true, honestly. Like, obviously I try not to go too much into it, but with things like, my background and stuff, there's been people that have hated on me quite a bit. And this is actually one of the reasons why we dropped the structure as the invited and I put Ashtarothi into the invited, because it's like, we live in a sandbox. I'm not hiding from anybody. If anybody wants to come and fuck with me, guess what? They can. And if people want to defend me, guess what? They can. And you know what? Either way, that's content. I'm going to just do the best that I can for my community in spite of any setbacks that we have. Anybody who wants to rally to my banner, I want to give the best for them. And anybody who wants to fuck with me, well, guess what? That's what EVE is all about. I'm going to turn you into content. Speaking of which, there is a non-zero chance that I will stream the structure bash on Friday. I don't know yet. I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, we got all 5 of these missions done. Where were we when we started? Undocking from Mise. So it's been about 30 minutes to get 5 missions done. When before it took me well, it was a level 4 mission, but it took me 30 minutes to do 1 mission. So yeah, if your goal is to get faction standings, which, remember, like the storyline arcs, the storyline missions are really good regardless of what level they are. So even if I'm doing level 2 missions, that's still going to be good for the faction storyline agent. Is the structure in high sec? Yes. Our target is in Solitude. By definition, the war headquarters must be in high sec. So both the structure that they bashed and their headquarters, which we bashed, they're both in high sec. So yeah, we're going to get back to Mize here soon. And so like I said, like 30 minutes to get 5 missions done. Obviously the ISK and LP was relatively low. But again, I'm not doing this for ISK or LP. I'm doing this for standings. So that way I can get more ISK and LP later on, doing higher level missions, or just to get the faction standings to be able to do any kind of mission within the faction. So I got 244 loyalty points total. Again, so you would not be doing this necessarily for the ISK rewards per se, but you're going to be doing that for the faction standings and also normal standings. Let's go and look at what that looks like. Because I've gotten Camel Tech. We can see here, my standings have gone from 0 to 0.1. So again, not exceptional, but I mean, grinding is grinding. It is still a grind. I never said it wasn't. But this is an efficient way of doing that, especially for level 2 missions. And also, shoot, we didn't look at the actual like cargo size. Let's look at what it would have taken to... I did this in a bustard because I'm fancy. So let's see what it would have taken to do this under normal conditions for like a newer player. Let's see what we can do with an alpha. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to switch. I mean, like alpha only, alpha friendly fit. I see. So my bit rate drops down to 0 sometimes, but then it spikes up and goes above the 6K that it normally is. So I think it like rebuffers back. I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell me what your guys' experience is with it. I don't know. Do you guys even see when I say these kinds of things? Do you even have a glitch in your... Because like 3 times already this stream, it's popped up with the thing that says the audio stream's current bit rate is 0, blah, 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 blah. So is there actually any disruption in my stream? Or is it just telling me that? Because every time I ask if you guys can hear me, you guys say you can hear me. I listen mostly, so it doesn't... It seems... Well, it says it's the audio, so as long as you can hear it and it still sounds fine, then it's great. But I'm talking pretty constantly, so you would have probably have noticed it right away. Because, yeah, it did say it was the audio stream's bitrate. So if it would have been anything, it would have been audio. Okay, so these distribution agents, if I wanted to grab this agent again, we would see that this is 300 M3, 200 M3, 350 M3, 300 M3, 300. So 600, 950, 1150. Oh yeah, so I actually could have done that entire route in a Synesis, guys. Yeah, I could have done this entire thing in a Synesis. And that would have been... See, it just did it again. Weird. So, yeah. If you're a newer player, you're trying to get in, you're trying to get some standings going, like this, it doesn't matter. You can be alpha, you can be whatever. Because, so, I know I keep on saying Synesis. So, you can find it in the convocation saved fittings, the corp fittings, but just so that people see it. This is the transportation Synesis. I think you do need to train a couple of skills in order to be able to do it as an alpha. It doesn't all fit right away. You can drop the cloak and the tractor beam. They're not necessary for the fit at all. And there might be some other pieces that you can move to, but like this is an alpha friendly fit. And the goal here is that this ship, if you turn off the micro warp drive, you can see that its alignment is 1.97. This is the big critical piece with this whole thing. And if you don't have enough skills, this might be above 2.0. And that is a problem. Because like the whole point of this ship is that it's uncatchable, right? In order to be uncatchable, it has to be sub 2 second align time. So this 1.97 is good. 2.0, not good. So if you're above 2.0, you would have to probably take off one of these expanded cargo holds and put another inertial stabilizer. And that should definitely get you below the 2.0 threshold. But with all of the cargo extenders, you can see I've got 1700 M3, which based on the math of what we just did, would have done that entire hauling route. And I would have been aligning much faster, and I would have been warping at 4.5 AU instead of 3.5 AU. So I would have just gotten, it would have been better for me to have done these missions in a Synesis than in this Bustard. Now, if I wanted to do 5 level 3 missions, for example, I'd probably need the Bustard at that point. If I wanted to do level 4 missions, I would almost certainly need the Bustard if I want to do more than one at a time. But for just level 1 and level 2 missions, distribution missions, this transportation Synesis, perfect. Anything that you want to do, any transportation in high sec or low sec, anywhere that there isn't bubbles, this is the go-to ship. If you're hauling something that is less than 1700 M3, you should pretty much be doing it in a Synesis unless you're taking it into a place with bubbles like nullsec or a corrupted system. Cool. Good stuff. Let's see. Anything else to talk about when it comes to distribution missions or anything else today? I will probably be streaming tomorrow. I don't get, like, I've been trying to figure out an opportunity to do the board game in real life. And I'm targeting, like, I've been talking to people, trying to find enough people in real life to actually play the board game. And so we're kind of coalescing around the idea of doing it on a Friday, but I don't think it's going to be put together enough to do it this Friday, which means I think that tomorrow I should be able to stream. Probably. No promises, but, you know, be on the Discord and see. If we do, here's my question for you guys. And I'll put up a poll as soon as this is over. And I'm going to make it, actually, let me just do it now while we're doing this. Because I want to do one more day of missions before, you know, next week we go into another topic. But I want to know, like, we've got 3 different options. We can do an Amar ship, we can do a Minmatar ship, or we can do burner missions. So I'm going to put up a post on my YouTube community page to be like, what ship for missions tomorrow? And we're going to put in the options of Amar, Minmatar, and Nurgle, which is the burner mission option. Okay? So that post, like the Amar one, I kind of want to do because, you know, the drones are good because they're kind of AFKable and they don't take ammo. Missiles, like the Raven, is just the classic mission runner. But the reason why Amar is kind of cool is because they don't take ammo in the same way. So it's kind of easier to just roll missions with an Amar. Minmatar, I probably have the least amount of experience using as a mission running ship. Most of the time I just go to the Macarial. So Minmatar, a Minmatar battleship could be a cool thing to look at. But I'll leave it up to you guys. It is now a public post. It is up on the YouTubes for you guys to vote on. And then whatever, assuming I can do it tomorrow, I mean, knock on wood and all that stuff, but we will tackle whichever one gets the most votes. That said, like I said, if you can go to, hold on, where's Malak's? Malak posted the thing earlier. Badger. There it is. If you can, go to this channel here, Ashrathi Decanted. That is going to be my stream, like for streams that are not about Eve or other stuff. I'm going to put some videos on there of my dog if you guys want, because I've got videos and stuff from my dog and whatnot. So I'll be putting those live probably later today. What time am I thinking about starting? Oh, that's a good question. You're doing this to try to commit me to actually doing it, and I appreciate that. Let's give it 2 hours. That's going to give me time to walk my dog. Wouldn't missions be before? Oh, yeah, that's right. Shit. Okay. If for some reason, that's right. Fuck. Ah. So, okay. If tomorrow's stream become either canceled or is about the structure bash, then I'll try to do whatever it gets voted on Monday. How about that? And then on Monday, we'll also vote for what the next week is going to be. Hell yeah, doggo videos. Exactly. See, I do have some on there, but I just need to like put them visible to people and stuff. Okay. And if you do like doggo videos and you are a member, Stealth Suit, make sure that you are in the Discord and you've linked your YouTube with your Discord, because that should give you supporter tags on the Discord, which would allow you to get into the supporter chat. And that's where I post a lot of my pictures and videos of the doggo. So, you know, if you're already a member, you should definitely be getting in on that. All right. Anything else today? Monday will be the defense if tomorrow's unsuccessful. Yeah, that's fair. But that's easier to do and stream on the same day. And hopefully won't be necessary. And I think it's also at a slightly different time. Either way, well, look, just get on the Discord and pay attention to the YouTubes to see what's going on. I'm going to do the best I can, guys. Again, if you want to help out, I'd love it. This is a good opportunity to go have some fun. But I think for today, for Eve, let me double check. Let me double check, make sure there's nothing else worth looking at today. People complaining about the Facebook thing. Okay, I'm done. I've been Astronaut. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put Eve into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and supporting me. Thank you again to Seventh Heaven for those gifted subs. But yeah, thanks for all of you guys who take the time to come hang out and support the stream. It's so valuable to me. And again, I think that I do this because I think that EVE Online is important. And that's what makes what I do here somewhat important. And so in spite of the haters, I do this for you guys because I think I'm telling you, and you can ask Malak or other people too, like, you know, I stress out about, you know, making content for a game that's full of people that doesn't necessarily like me, but like I don't make this for them. I make this for you guys. As long as people find the content that I make valuable, then I feel committed to doing it. Like, you know, I feel like I have something of value to provide for the community based on my experience, understanding, and you know, the ability to put things into context for my fellow Empyreans. And some of you agree, and you're the ones that I do this for. So I really, really appreciate it. And we will see each other soon. But all that said, I've been Asher Aldi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put Eve into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for coming, hanging out, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing it with a friend. Those are all very, very important, and you guys are awesome for doing it. Extra special thanks to my top tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Evo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, Maya, Malak, Starfire, Malin, Merc, Mayak, Nephilim, LM1, Sheesh, Cicero, Threns, and Rid. If you want to be on the list of my top tier supporters, consider becoming an Immortal patron or member. And then I too can mispronounce your name as well. But you know, you can also become a member and get access to all those emotes and early edited videos and the supporters channel and all that stuff. And I do appreciate it because that is what makes this possible. Thank you for that sub, Costo, if you're here, and everybody else. Like I said, just even if you can consider supporting the stream in any way you want. But just liking it and sharing it with a friend and commenting does so much. It's a big deal, and I really do appreciate those who do it. But I'm an Ashrothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. Never. Oh fuck! 2 hours. I said 2 hours. So, 2 hours is 4:20 local time. Let's target that. I will put up. Yeah, let's give me 2 hours from now. I'll see you in space, or Star Wars space. Star Wars space. Hopefully, we'll see each other in Star Wars space soon. 07. I'm gonna go see if I can get the doggo in here.
Bring on the wrecking machine.
I don't think she's having it, guys. Maybe next time. See you then. For every city